Get peppy. Welcome to Jurassic Pep. That was a request from a pepper. I hope you liked it.
Love it.
I didn't write your name down, but thanks for the idea. It's Pep 171 or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on ABC Australia, which you can see on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. on ABC TV and 8 p.m. on Fridays on ABC News, or anytime you like on iView or Facebook at ABC Planet America, or on YouTube on the ABC News In-Depth channel. On Pep, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening to us, you can also find Pep on YouTube and Facebook, where you'll also find timestamps and show notes in the blurb. And if you leave a comment under those videos, we are likely to see it. You can request stupid shit like welcome to Jurassic Pep. You can also tweet us at PEPCHASDRDAVE at pep.chas.drdave. If you want to contact me privately, you can ask me on Twitter. I'll allow you to direct message or email me, or you can just direct message me on Facebook, for that matter. But for now, let's reacquaint ourselves with everyone's favourite man who does not raise the stakes on inconsequential views. I'm talking, of course, about Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. David Smith.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. David Smith. I'm an associate professor at the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. But Chaz, do you remember No Doubt's 1997 hit Don't Speak?
I do.
Yeah, well, I don't speak for the United States Studies Centre or for the University of Sydney. When I'm on PEP, which, by the way, these days stands for Planet Extra Professional, thanks to Richard Cook's attention to our tech setup, I am only speaking for myself, not for any other institution or individual.
How is it possible that we got to 171 without you coming up with the don't speak, no doubt, change up? For your information at home, this is 2:09 p.m, a little bit late, on Friday, the 2nd of August in Sydney. And I don't know what happened in the last 24 hours. I won't be talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the prisoner exchange other than that J.D. Vance congratulated Trump for it. And by the time you're listening to this, there may be a VP.
Yes.
There may be a VP nominee picked by Kamala Harris, but let me stress, we do not know who that is at this point.
We absolutely do not. What are you grateful for, Dave?
I'm grateful for the fact that Sydney's weather actually turned cold again, because there were a few days what could only be described as disturbingly pleasant weather in the middle of winter.
Says the guy wearing a T-shirt.
Now, where it got really disturbing for me, like global warming's really out of hand, was when I got swooped by two magpies in the middle of July. That's at least 6 weeks early. But however, I don't know if that's because they were nesting or just because a lot of birds don't like me for some reason. Like,
I'm thinking they might have seen your hair and thought, ooh, that's a mansion.
when I lived in Seattle, there was this whole murder of crows near where I lived in Wallingford who would just go after me on a regular basis. And because crows are very intelligent communicators, when I was approaching this block where they lived, for Pepper's in Seattle, this is on Northeast 45th, just west of I-5 in Wallingford, these crows would start like, rah, 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 and suddenly I could hear the whole block going, rah, 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 and then they would just go. Just like I'd turn the corner, more of them swooping at me. And when I was trying to find out why this might be, I was reading that at the University of Washington, which was just down the road, they'd done all of these experiments on crows to see how long they remembered things, which involved taunting crows while wearing scary masks. And not only did they find that crows remembered this for a very long time, they found that crows who hadn't experienced the taunting also knew about it. Like, the crows are capable of telling each other, like, this guy is an asshole. Now, I was not involved in the crow experiments. They had taken place 6 years before I got there. But maybe the crows are like fucking academics.
So hang on. Are you saying that the crows, what they communicate what the bad person looks like?
Yes, because they had
like
people,
sketch artists.
They had people taunting them in these particular masks, and the lead researcher found, much to his surprise, that there were other crows around the University of Washington who hadn't been involved in the experiment who were getting really pissed off every time he came near them wearing this mask. So, yeah, the crows are very smart.
Very descriptive in their ass.
Yes.
Apparently.
And by the way, for any peppers in Seattle, I'm very glad to hear that the Belltown Hellcat has been apprehended. The rest of you are just going to have to Google what that is.
Fair enough. The other thing about the crows, though,
Yes.
I can't get past the crows,
Yeah.
is that if they can tell the nuances in our faces, we can't tell the difference between crows.
No, of course we can't.
So they're smarter than us.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, they were wearing threatening masks. So, it's not the most subtle nuances.
Sure.
But I take the point, they are smarter than us.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what I'm grateful for is maybe the crows were asking you. They're so intelligent. Maybe they were asking you about your book list. Maybe that's what they were swooping at. They want some tips for some summer reading.
Why aren't there any crow authors on this list?
It's hard to go past, for me, the sporting extravaganza in Paris right now.
Yeah, but with shitty mascots.
Oh, no, yeah, look, let's not start that again. That was a 20-minute run. I am, of course, talking about the event that stops the world every 4 years, which is the European Handball competition. European Handball, or as I like to call it, white person basketball. It's not, by the way, just to be clear, it's not four-square handball, okay? It's not King, Queen, Jack, Dunce. That's not European handball. European handball is essentially, if you haven't watched it, it's like water polo without the water and without the nipple cripples. Right? It's super tough. Have you watched any before?
No.
It's awesome. It's super tough. It involves fast skills. The goalies are especially good. It's also a sport, by the way, where the female version is probably better, I reckon, than the male version, because there's more skill and less intimidation in the female version, which I think makes it much better to watch, much more interesting. And there is a whole channel dedicated to it on the Australian coverage. I imagine the American coverage as well. I especially in the European coverage for the European Peppers. It's awesome. The European Peppers will be right across handball. I want to tell you a quick story, though, about European handball, how I got into it.
Yeah.
I once had a scheme to become a European handballer.
Really?
Yes, I schemed. And the reason I schemed, it was very simple. I was 23 years old and it was the year 2000.
Wow.
And the Sydney Olympics were upon us.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, I was prime age, all right? And I thought to myself, I want to be in the Olympics. I want to hang around with some American swimmers. And but the problem is I have no skills and no sporting ability. So I thought, okay, the host nation has to take part in every sport, even the sports that the host nation doesn't play.
Yeah.
So pick the sport that's never televised, that there's just no way we'll have decent players for, and just basically just be a token competitor in that sport.
Yeah.
Be the only person who volunteers for that sport and be an Olympic athlete. That was my logic, right? And so I went down in 999. I went down the program and thought, European handball. I've never heard of that. So I went to play European handball, and I fell in love with it immediately. It was a great sport. As it turns out, unfortunately, I discovered that there are at least 10 people in Australia who do play European handball. So I stood no chance, unfortunately, making the Australian European handball team, because basically they're all like 6'7" or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you noticed, I'm not. I lost the Olympics, but I gained a novelty sport that I could enjoy every 4 years.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
Yeah, so I tell you that story, not just because it's a bit of fun, but also because there's another Australian Olympics coming up, Peppers. So for all of in 2032. So if you're under the age of 25 or so, so you'll still be, somewhere around your peak.
Yeah.
I would recommend you start surveying the Olympics schedule and see if you can find some other dubious non-televised
Still
sport.
think unless you're gigantic and Dutch and here for some reason, you've probably not got a very good chance.
I'm not talking European handball. I'm talking some other sport.
Oh, right.
Because there are all kinds of extra dodgy sports.
Who knows what's going to be on there now?
Yeah,
like auctioneering.
Maybe. Sounds very... This is Brisbane, not Sydney. If it was Sydney again, it'd be auctioneering. Anyway, my point is, have a look for dubious sports. See if you can get yourself in the Olympics in 2032. That's enough of that. Let's go. I tried something last week where the Correspondence was going to be in the the Chaz Unleashed, but I didn't get time for it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to split it. I'm going to do a little bit of correspondence at the top and then a little bit at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do just a little bit of correspondence at the top. This is Biden effective correspondence.
Biden effective.
Yes, this is from which you got a couple of people. Summer Rose.
Yeah.
Asks, I'm curious why Dr. Dave said the Biden presidency was ineffective. We actually had a few people ask this.
Yeah.
From all I've read, Biden has and will be one of the more consequential presidents since FDR. The US has recovered and boomed after COVID, whereas many other wealthy countries, including Australia, have struggled. CZ Gaz had a similar kind of question. Basically, we just mentioned it in passing and then you went on.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so nearly all of Biden's major accomplishments, and don't get me wrong, they were major, happened in the first 6 months of his presidency when he was enjoying the mother of all honeymoons, when it came to media coverage, when it came to public opinion, when it came to the fact that Republicans were absolutely whipped at that point.
When it came to be able to speak clearly.
Yes.
That was the mother of all honeymoons for his administration.
And he had this unusually cooperative Congress because not only was 2020 to 2021 probably the single biggest period for bipartisan legislation in my lifetime because there was so much emergency relief that was needed for COVID. Immediately after that election, there was a narrow House majority for Democrats. There was the narrowest possible Senate majority for Democrats, but everyone was in a really cooperative mood, even Republicans at that point. So that's why they were able to get all of this very, very consequential legislation through that did save the US economy and that actually managed to get some progressive policy through at the same time. Now, the reason why I say that he's ineffective is because once the honeymoon conditions were gone, so was Biden's presidency. And I think that the presidents that I would rate as effective were those who'd be able to do something in more adverse circumstances.
Okay.
And yes, Biden was effective, but you know who else was very effective was Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
Biden's achievements are as much Nancy Pelosi's as they are his. So that's why I would say that, and I know that I'm at odds with a lot of progressives here, because, despite the fact that I am a progressive, and I do like the fact that Biden is the most pro-union president probably in 100 years. I love the fact that he went and stood on the picket line, but in objective terms, I don't think he was that effective.
All I would add to that is that, yes, certainly it's a bit of a line that you hear a lot about him being extraordinarily effective. And there's no doubt he got plenty of stuff done. The CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act. Infrastructure Act was that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And obviously, the COVID Relief Act as well. And a couple other little things here and there. But what I would add is you hear this a lot about the most consequential since either LBJ or FDR. I think people underestimate how much other presidents do.
Yes, yeah.
I really do think that we don't even consider a lot of stuff. Like, for instance, obviously Obama in his first term did a lot of stuff. The Recovery Act was huge.
Yes.
The auto industry bailout was massive. The Dodd-Frank financial oversight law was massive. The Lilly Ledbetter Act was on pay equity was decent. The Affordable Care Act was generational.
As Joe Biden said, big fucking deal.
Absolutely. That was all in the first term.
And Obama, even though in the first 2 years, Obama had an even more cooperative Congress, it was only cooperative because of the Democratic majority. Republicans were they had their knives out for Obama from the very beginning.
That's absolutely true.
And Obama had to contend with the Tea Party crowd from the very beginning, whereas Biden, for the first 2 years of his presidency, didn't have to face any of those kinds of headwinds. But basically, after the Afghanistan withdrawal, just found he was a lot less effective.
Yeah, and while Obama had 60 votes in the Senate at one point in time, he didn't use it for any of those big pieces of legislation.
He didn't.
Because it took ages to get that big legislation up.
Yes, yeah.
Because they used to actually use committees back then as opposed to now. But also, it's not just Obama. I mean, I'll tell you someone who no one ever talks about as consequential, George W. Bush. Think about what he did in his first term. Like he passed the Patriot Act, the No Child Left Behind Act, his Medicare reform bill, these tax cuts, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. He created DHS. Now, you might not like any of
It
those
was
things.
all shit.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying...
But it was effective.
Yeah. I'm not saying that...
It was effectively shit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying you got to like
Trump
it.
didn't manage to fuck things up that much.
Exactly. And I haven't mentioned the Iraq War and the Afghanistan war. Like, he did a lot.
Yeah, he did a lot.
Yeah, and you might say worst president ever. I wouldn't necessarily put up an argument, but I would say
To get worst president ever, you got to do something.
yeah, he did a lot. He was extremely consequential.
Yeah.
Like he just don't point which direction he was consequential in, but he was extremely consequential. He really was. And so yeah, I think that. But I mean, I think when people say the point about Biden is he did it all with 50 seats in the Senate.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And you should get credit for that.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about just pure achievements, I think people underestimate how much other presidents have done. Mm-hmm. That's all I would say.
Yeah.
Strengths, opportunities, correspondence. Scott says, with respect to Kamala's strengths and opportunities, when we were talking about in the last podcast.
Yes.
He thought that Jen Palmieri made a very interesting point in the Bulwark podcast. Now, you might have noticed this is not the Bulwark podcast, but I'm going to play the bit of the Bulwark podcast because I thought that was a really interesting point. So why don't we just steal their point?
And the big thing going for her, though, is the 100 days and not having gone through a primary. Why has America never had a woman yet president? It's because one of the reasons is our primary system, the way we elect presidents, really disadvantages women because, and here, look at 2020, 6 women ran, very experienced, Harris, Gillibrand, Warren, Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, well, we're going to set her aside. 5 great women. And it's really, but what was all the coverage? Beto, Buttigieg, Bernie, and Biden. So you either never break through, or as what happened with Clinton is that we had so many attacks that you come into the general election with a lot of baggage and a lot of questions about like, why is there something about her I just don't like? And Harris has been presented to us as the solution. And also ambition is such a big thing. She's not someone who sought this out. She was loyally standing by her man, Joe Biden, just being a great number 2. And he asked her to do this. He said, she is the person I want to do this. So she is coming forward to us as a clear winner, everyone rallying behind her. And now she is coming to us not as someone like, oh, she's seeking that she wants to be the first woman president. She's always wanted that. It's like she's solving a problem.
I reckon the fact that Kamala Harris hasn't had to deal with being the ambitious woman, I think's really helped her.
Yes.
I really do. I mean, I think that's a part of sexism in society that's hard to get past. And that will help break the glass ceiling. If she indeed went on to win, I think that would be a large part of the reason why.
Yes.
I think it's a great call.
I think it is. I have actually been wondering whether this is going to have any long-term consequences for primaries as an institution.
You can make them later.
Where they're seeing the way that this has happened. I mean, especially if she went on to win, but even if she didn't, Democrats must be thinking this is so much better than what we usually have to go through when it comes to the selection of presidents. Now, it'd be very difficult to engineer a process of basically elite selection that's going to make everybody happy. But I think that it does expose how, primaries are there for a very specific reason, which we have talked about. But they waste a huge amount of time and a huge amount of money, and they waste a lot of candidates.
Yeah.
They waste a lot of people's careers.
Yeah, and people get essentially worked over a period of 6 months or 12 months, and they shouldn't, like, it actually provides no benefit to the electorate.
No.
To have just someone being worked over by bullshit. I mean, if they got worked over because they're a bad organizer or something, then fine. But if it's just, no, we just need Fox News to have 3 years to wear you down with bullshit.
Yeah.
By the time Hillary Clinton was actually ready to step up, to actually run a race, she was already done.
Yes.
Because she'd been worked over for with just bullshit for years and years and years.
But it also, and it does leave us in this situation where 18 months out from an election, we've got all of this focus on who's the most qualified because they visited the most toilets in Iowa. Fuck that.
Yeah. Well, actually, this leads into the next correspondence.
Okay.
US elections correspondence.
Yes.
My question is, why? This is from Gary.
Mm-hmm.
Why do US elections take so bloody long compared to Aussie and UK elections?
Yep. Look, that's an excellent question. When we think about the 6-week campaigns that we have in the UK and in Australia. Now, I mean, effectively the campaign goes for longer than that, let's be real. But the unfortunate reason is actually not one that's easy to change. Why do we have such short campaigns in Australia and the UK? Because the Prime Minister decides the date and the Prime Minister announces the date. Unfortunately, I feel there's something a bit inevitable about a long campaign when everybody knows literally hundreds of years in advance when each election is going to be.
That's great.
And therefore they always, the advantage is always going to be with who organises, who fundraises, everything earliest. Unless you actually put specific laws in place banning campaigning or banning certain forms of fundraising outside certain windows, you're not going to be able to do anything about that.
Well, I was going to say the money is obviously a huge
Yes.
issue. When you're talking about UK elections, I think there's a maximum of, off the top of my head, $44 million, I think, you can spend.
Yes.
Australia is less than that.
Yeah.
So, in the US, they're spending billions of dollars. You need time to raise billions of dollars.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and so if you have the time, you know when it's going to be, which is a great point from you there, Dave. If you know when it's going to be and you can plan it, then you will take as much time as you possibly can to raise the money.
Yes.
The billions of dollars that you need.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I think it's the two of them working hand in hand.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. That was a good question. Thank you, Gary. Let's get into it. I'll put the meme. There's a lot of meme correspondence, especially from Gen Z's going, guys, you're really old.
Yeah, look, I accept that.
I did feel really old too.
Yes.
But by the end,
you gotta, for our generation, a meme is a photo with some horrible blocky white font in front of it making a terrible boomer joke. That's what a meme is for us.
Yeah. Let's not start talking about this again. We're going to start feeling old again. Honestly, by the end of that conversation, I was feeling like Dick Van Dyke. I was feeling very, very old. But let's get into the content. At the end of, if I've got the time, at the end, we'll talk about memes. Or I'll talk about memes on Chaz Unleashed and a few other correspondences which I've saved as well. Start with, most of this podcast is going to be about the campaign this week. It's all related to the campaign, obviously.
Yes.
Let's start off with the beginning of the week. Dave, you wrote an op-ed about this,
I did.
imagine you have something to say. The bit about...
Certainly do.
I'll play the clip just to remind everyone.
Yes.
This was Trump's advice for his people at a rally.
Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Okay, Dave, what do you want to say about that?
Okay. I do not blame Democrats for pouncing on this and saying, this is Trump's dictatorial ambitions. It's basically your duty to do that if you're on the other side.
Let me quote people.
Yes.
Adam Schiff, this year, democracy's on the ballot. If we're to save it, we must vote against authoritarianism. Here, Trump helpfully reminds us that the alternative is never having the chance to vote again. The Kamala campaign said, our democracy is under assault by criminal Donald Trump. After last election, Trump lost. He sent a mob to overturn the results. This campaign, he's promised violence if he loses, the end of our elections if he wins, and the termination of the Constitution to empower him to be a dictator to enact his dangerous Project 2025 agenda on America.
Yeah. Now, thing is, Trump has said and done plenty of stuff in the past that shows his authoritarian strains. Like he has said maybe the Constitution should be terminated because of the fact that he lost the election. He suggested, remember in 2020, that the election should be postponed after I've just talked about the fact you cannot postpone an election. And yes, he tried to overturn the results. All of that is completely true, and that's enough evidence of his authoritarian streak. However, he was not, I'm pretty confident, not suggesting that he was going to end elections here. Okay, the first thing to note, and this was really quite negligently missed by most of the media, is this is a version of a joke that he had actually made 5 days earlier in front of another Christian audience. Now, in that earlier version of the joke, it was a lot more... This time you could tell he'd really clearly planned it. This was much more of an offhand comment. And he actually... he said... It was a joke about he thinks that Christians are very reluctant voters, which, by the way, is pretty wildly inaccurate.
Yeah.
Evangelicals are about 14% of the population. They were 19% of the electorate. You compare that to non-religious people who are about 26% of the population, 24% of the electorate. This is according to Pew data. So it's not that Christians are reluctant voters, but he's sort of chastising them as reluctant voters, saying that you've got to get out and vote, which is a good indication of how much he's going to rely on them in this election. And he was saying like, oh, yeah, they go to church every Sunday, but they don't vote. He said, just vote this once. You don't have to vote again in 4 years. Don't vote. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. And the funny thing about that joke is he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He does not give a fuck about the future of the Republican Party or about anything else.
It's funny because it's true.
It's funny because it's true.
Yes.
So that was the kind of original joke.
Right.
Now, he's developed it a bit more this time, but in his characteristically Trumpian way, he's actually added more stuff in to make it more serious, right? And I think this is why it was largely missed, the fact that it had its origins in a joke, because it didn't sound like a joke when he was, or it didn't sound as much like a joke when he was saying it this time around, because he had thought of more stuff to put in it. Now, I'd like to revisit something that I have said a few times over the years, which is, whereas somebody like George W. Bush was very good at speaking in this language, which meant something to evangelical Christians that non-evangelical Christians couldn't pick up. I've said a lot that Trump has never really mastered this because he doesn't have the scriptural skill. I've got to say now, Trump actually has got good at this, or at least he has got relatively good at this. And when Trump was saying, you're never going to have to vote again because we'll fix everything so good. Okay, what is he actually saying? This is part of a long line of promises he has made to Christian voters going all the way back to 2016. One of the underrated aspects of Trump's appeal to Christians is the fact that conservative Christians feel they were failed by generations of conservative Christian politicians, including presidents who were devout evangelical Christians like Jimmy Carter and like George W. Bush. Basically, they had these generations of politicians, generations of Christian leaders who promised to fight culture war battles, to stop the tide of liberalism and to bring the country back morally in line with their values. And what they saw from this, from their point of view, was things just always got worse, right? They could not stem the secular tide, could not stem the liberal tide. Even where they won legal victories, they were clearly losing cultural victories on all of this stuff. And so they were very frustrated with this kind of politics. Then along comes Trump and starts promising them everything. Now, prior to Trump, not even a really devout presidential candidate would actually promise to overturn Roe versus Wade. This was a taboo. When judges were being questioned, they would never say, I will overturn Roe versus Wade. Trump was the first one to get up there and openly promise, I'm going to appoint judges who will overturn Roe versus Wade. He also said that he was going to overturn the Johnson Amendment. That's the constitutional amendment that imposes some barriers on religions getting directly involved in politics. Now, these are not just policy, if you overturn these are not just policy aims. These are not just policy shifts. These are really significant earthquakes when it comes to the relationship between religion and state in America. And not only was he promising them this, he was hinting at much, much bigger things. To me, the moment of the 2020 Republican convention was Kimberly Guilfoyle's famous scream,
Yes.
"The best is yet to come!"
Yes.
Now, if you're steeped in the language of the apocalypse, you know she's talking about the final battle. Trump himself often uses the term final battle, especially when he's talking about, we'll get all the Marxists out of America. And this is the thing, for what a lot of conservative Christians want to hear, especially the more apocalyptically minded one. By the way, apocalypse doesn't just mean massive disaster. It means revelation. It means this is where the final contest between light and darkness is going to take place. This is what they want to hear. It's not just that there'll be minor policy gains. It's not just that there'll be occasional reversals of fortune in the culture war. It's that the world is made up of friends of God and enemies of God, and enemies of God are in charge of everything, and we've got to destroy them. We've got to win this battle. And that's why all of Trump's language in terms of friend and enemy, rather than usually in terms of concrete policy proposals, why that chimes so deeply with evangelical Christians. So a lot has been made of the fact that Trump, if anything, this year is downplaying policy that conservative Christians want. So the Republican platform this year, it's really modified the hardline stance against abortion. A lot of other things that conservative Christians want aren't even mentioned in that platform. Now, why can Trump get away with this? Because he's got so much credibility with evangelical Christians. He's the one who delivered the judges who overturned Roe versus Wade. He does not seem to have lost any support from conservative Christians, despite the fact that this year he's basically ignoring them in policy terms. They don't mind because he is promising them much bigger things. And we have to remember that credibility is at an all-time high right now because of the assassination attempt.
God saved him.
As we said, there's no way that people wouldn't read religious significance into what seems like an insanely low probability event that someone would, shoot at him and graze his ear, but that God would leave him alive. And Trump is really himself leaning into the religious significance of this in ways that I actually haven't seen before. Like he often has retweeted people suggesting that he is Jesus or is God in some way. But this time he's actively using the language himself. Now, going back to the original time that he made this joke about Christians, you'll never have to vote again, there was another thing that he said that did get picked up by the internet, but I think the internet missed its significance, which was he said, if I were to take this shirt off, you'd see a body, you'd see a beautiful body, but you'd also see a lot of wounds. He said, I've taken so many wounds, more maybe than any other president. Now, of course, HuffPost picked this up and saying, are you seriously saying you've got more wounds than JFK and Abraham Lincoln and other presidents who actually died? Yeah. Even Reagan was coughing up blood in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. As usual, they've missed the point. Why is Trump talking about wounds? Usually when American tough guys are talking about the injuries that they've incurred, they don't talk about wounds. They talk about scars, right? Because a wound is something that is still open. A wound is something that has not healed. A scar is a sign of victory. So why is he talking about wounds? Because wounds are associated with Jesus. Okay? St. Peter says in one of the epistles of the Bible, I'm struggling to remember exactly what book it is, but anyway, Peter says, by his wounds you were healed. I actually feel Trump's use of the word wounds is not accidental here. I think he has spent enough time hanging around Pentecostals by this point that he knows the resonance of the term wounds, and that's why he's using that rather than scars. And that's why he's making this observation, which otherwise makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Like, why are you talking about why you're covered in so many wounds? But he's basically saying, I've taken these wounds for you, not just the literal bullet, but all of the attacks on me, these wounds,
Yes,
they're for you. So he's actually really leaning into this language now. Now, I do want to stress, most Christians, even most conservative Christians, would not agree with Wayne Allen Root when he says Trump is the second coming of God.
Most wouldn't.
Most wouldn't.
Yes.
I mean, Trump did retweet that, but most Christians are not going to agree with it. But they definitely believe that God is using Trump for God's purposes and that God is protecting Trump. And the reason why God's protecting Trump is because Trump is protecting them from their enemies. Okay, right. Am I over-explaining this joke? Yes. But at least I'm over-explaining it correctly.
Yes.
It's all about, he's being coyly apocalyptic about this. He's basically saying to Christians, yes, there's not a lot in that platform. We're not talking about national abortion bans, but trust me, just elect me and I'm going to bring on the final battle with your enemies. So that, I believe, is what Trump was saying. The other revelations in this joke, as I said, first of all, he is going to rely on driving up turnout in the base to win this election.
Yep.
That's becoming increasingly clear, which is why he is getting out there and urging Christians to vote. As I'm sure we're going to look at, his outreach to African Americans seems to have stalled somewhat. So if anything, he might be relying more on white Christian votes than he was relying before. Yeah, and the second thing is, it should not be Democrat. It should be Republicans who are worried about this joke. Because he, after 8 years of the I alone can fix it, I alone can be trusted, I alone am being used and protected by God, right? Who else is going to take over from that?
Yeah.
Like, who else is going to drive this vehicle that Trump has turned into his personal vehicle?
The Son of God, Baron. It's obvious.
Yeah.
Look, it's interesting. It's interesting the precise wording that you're ascribing to him, Dave. I mean, look, I think you're right. Like he does hang enough. Like he has these strange people praying over him with their hands and little circles and stuff all the time. So
yes,
he probably has heard this language enough. But given how precise the wording you are ascribing to his intentionality, I find it interesting because I don't know how much of this we're going to play. I'm going to say I'm going to come back in the edit and I'll decide how much
Shaz will decide
how much we can afford to play. But this week he sat for what I think could be the worst interview of his presidency.
Okay.
And post-presidency.
Yes. Yep.
It was with Laura Ingraham
yes.
on Fox News. And I honestly, I could play 4 clips from this interview because every single topic we talk about, they discussed.
Yeah.
And in every single one, the same thing happened, which was Trump just blathered. And Laura Ingraham was like, hey, over here, I'm trying to save your ass. Just say this thing, which I'm trying to get you to say. And then he'd blather, but just as if he just didn't get the hint. And she'd go, hey, hey, let me be very explicit. They think you think this, so I want you to say this.
Yeah.
And they just keep on blathering just obliviously.
Yeah.
Like she was trying to lead him through the woods.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was just a giant redwood tree incapable of moving. Right? It was so dumb. It was just so dumb. And it was just, anyway, and this was the first example. I'll play a little bit of it.
Yeah.
All these extracts actually go for 4 or 5 minutes because she wouldn't give up. She tried 5, 6 times and he just wouldn't get the hint. And so I don't know how much I'm going to play this, but just we'll just start with just a little bit.
Okay.
And I promise you, I'm not going to play the whole section because they all go forever.
They're saying that you said to a crowd of Christians that they won't have to vote in the future.
Yeah, let me say what did I mean by that. I had a tremendous crowd speaking to Christians. I mean, this was a crowd that liked me a lot. I think I'm at 97% or something. And they're treated very badly by this administration, okay? Catholics are treated unbelievably. They're like persecuted. And if I might say, before I go into the other, Jewish people, if you're Jewish and you vote for Biden or the Democrats or Kamala or whoever's going to run, I guess it's going to be her. But if you voted for her or the Democrats, you should have your head examined because nobody's ever been treated so badly by this. This administration is destroying Israel, et cetera, et cetera. So with respect to like a statement like I made, that statement is very simple. I said, vote for me. You're not going to have to do it ever again. It's true. Because we have to get the vote out. Christians are not known as a big voting group. They don't vote. And I'm explaining that to them. You never vote. This time, vote. I'll straighten out the country. You won't have to vote anymore. I won't need your vote. You can go back
So
to
you
not
meant you don't have to vote for you because you have 4 years in office.
Look. Christians are known. You know who else doesn't vote? Gun owners don't vote.
But
They don't
just to
vote.
be clear, what you're saying, though, you're not saying it's being interpreted as you are not surprised to hear by the left as well. They're never going to have another election. He's saying there's not. So
First time I've even heard.
Can you even just respond to that?
I said Christians. I started off by saying, just so you understand, you never vote. Christians do not vote well. They vote in very small percentages. Why? I don't know. Maybe they're disappointed in things that are happening. But for a long time, I say, you don't vote. I'm saying, go out. You must vote. November 5th is going to be the most important election in the history of our country. Whether you vote early or not, we should have, by the way, one-day voting. We should have voter ID. We should have proof of citizenship. And we should have paper ballots, okay? That's what we should have. But we don't have that. But I said to the Christians in the room, thousands of them, I said, typically, Christians do not vote.
It goes on.
Yeah.
It goes on, and he never gives her what she wants.
So many great things about this, starting with the journalistic professionalism of the left is attacking you for all kinds of ridiculous reasons. But, I keep coming back to his conviction that Christians are low propensity voters.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, no, they are not. I don't want to say I get worried about him being misled by his campaign, but I think it's because all his campaign really knows how to do is to drive up the base, that they've somehow convinced him that that's all they do need to do.
I don't know.
Let's
move on. There's so much more to talk about, and there's so many more excerpts from that Laura Ingraham interview to play.
I just want to point out, Trump cannot say the name of an ethnic minority without it sounding like a slur.
The Jews.
It doesn't matter how inoffensive it is.
Yeah.
When he says it, it sounds like a slur.
Okay, the next part of this week was JD Vanceville. It was the JD Vance Hall. Now he had some problems to begin with. In that he is, without doubt, the least popular vice presidential nominee in at least our lifetime. According to Harry Enton, he has a net favorability of -6 points. That's straight out of the block.
Yep.
Now it's actually -15 points. But in week one, it was -6 points. And Harry Enton said back to 1980, that's as far as he checked.
Yeah.
No one has ever had a negative net favorability as a vice presidential nominee straight out of the
Yes,
straight
as a
out.
non-incumbent, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The average since 2000 was plus 19 favourability. Dan Quayle had, out of the gate, had a plus 15 favourability.
Wow.
Sarah Palin, out of the gate, plus 26
Yes,
favourability.
I remember that.
And then they became negative after a while. But,
Yeah.
but straight out of the gate, JD Vance is minus 6, now minus 15. And he's got a bit of a bee in his bonnet about birth rates, does JD Vance. And look, to be fair to JD Vance, that's a real thing. The birth rates are reducing. And there are people who aren't just using stalking horses for anti-abortion arguments who care about this. Like there are economists who say this is not good. There are sociologists who say people are not happy. They're like there are people who want to have kids who aren't having kids.
Yeah.
And in fact, I actually strongly recommend, if you're interested in this topic at all, I spoke to a demographer, Lyman Stone, who is a Christian conservative, but he's not a partisan Christian conservative, and this is an issue he really cares about.
And look, all kinds of quite normal governments pursue all kinds of policies to get people to have more children.
Absolutely. Australians older Australians will remember that Peter Costello had the big deal about this about 20 years ago.
Yeah, he said have 3 kids, one for mum, one for dad, and one for the country.
There you go.
I'm not saying that was an entirely normal way of doing it, but
it was more normal than the way JD Vance is doing it.
Yes, a lot more normal.
Anyway, so if you're interested in this topic, go to the Facebook, the Play America Facebook, and I've got a 28-minute interview with Lyman Stone there that I'm putting up on. I just put up now. It's a doozy. He's very good. But my point is that while this is a real topic, JD Vance has, well, when he was running for the Senate, he tried to take this normal topic and turn it into red meat, which really shouldn't have been. And he decided he gave a proper speech where he expressed some real policy and spoke about it properly, and had some disclaimers, and it was like a speech. But then there was just a little bit of red meat.
You go on any of these prediction markets, they'll tell you who's most likely to win the Democrat nomination for president in 2024, 2028. Think about all those people. The names are obvious. They're well-known people. Kamala Harris, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who's now the Secretary of Transportation, Cory Booker, AOC. Think all these people. They're different. They come from different walks of life, different parts of the country. What is the one thing that unites every single one of them? Not a single one of them has any children. And why is that? Why have we let the Democrat Party become controlled by people who don't have children? And why is this just a normal fact of American life? That the leaders of our country should be people who don't have a personal and direct stake in it via their own offspring, via their own children and grandchildren. Now let me do the necessary throat clearing because I do think it's important. Look, a lot of people are unable to have kids for very complicated and important reasons. I know good friends of mine who have struggled to find the right girl, find the right guy. There are people, of course, for biological reasons, medical reasons, that can't have children. The target of these remarks is not them. It's important to point that out. There have always been people like that who, even though they would like to have kids, unable to have them. Let's set them to the side. It is one thing to recognize that there are people who don't have children. It's one thing to recognize that there are people who don't have children through no fault or choice of their own. But it's something else to build a political movement invested theoretically in the future of this country when not a single one of them actually has any physical commitment to the future of this country.
As you can see there, he spent quite a lot of time on the qualifiers.
Yes.
I mean, he still had the little little hack jab at the end,
Yes.
but it was, as far as the hack scale goes, it was, I don't know, maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. Like it certainly wasn't a 10 out of 10. Far from it.
No.
But then this was the problem for JD Vance. He got quite a lot of reaction out of just the hack bit.
He did.
And he got a critical bit of reaction from Tucker Carlson, who really liked that hack bit.
Yes, yeah.
So then Tucker Carlson got him on his show.
Yes.
And then JD Vance just dropped all the reasonable stuff and he expanded the hack bit to be every single word he had to say.
Yep.
And this is the clip that you've probably seen.
What were you saying?
Thanks, Tucker. And by the way, if folks want to help us out, jdvance.com. Every little bit helps if you can throw us a couple bucks. But look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? I just wanted to ask that question and propose that maybe if we want a healthy ruling class in this country, we should invest more, we should vote more, we should support more people who actually have kids, because those are the people who ultimately have a more direct stake in the future of this country.
Man.
That's a bit different, isn't it?
Yes.
And I played the entire answer there.
Yes.
Because something that JD Vance is really enjoying whinging about this week is being taken out of context.
Yes.
So there is the complete context of that answer. And I don't think there's more later on where he qualifies himself. No, they move on. So that is the full answer in all its glory and context.
Yes.
Okay. So he had no qualifiers. And so people, understandably, who didn't have kids for all kinds of reasons, got quite offended by that.
Yes.
And look, full credit to Kamala Harris's campaign team, who were previously Joe Biden's campaign team.
Yeah.
They held on to that during the convention.
Yeah.
They waited till the right moment to jump on it.
Yes.
And as soon as it was over and they had some clear air, then they jumped on it in a big way. And by the way, note also, the first thing he did in that clip was to ask for donations. The very first thing he did. That's always a good sign. You're going to be putting forth some well thought out academia when you ask for donations. And also note as well that the way he phrased it was that these childless politicians want to make you miserable because they're miserable.
They're miserable at their own lives.
Yeah, that's the logic, right? So that's obviously very different. Okay,
Yes.
so what are your thoughts before I go into more detail on this?
I mean, I'm not even going to bother engaging with, like, first of all, him claiming that these three people are the entire future of the Democratic Party and are completely representative of it, or the idea that you have to have children to care about the future or to be able to make good decisions about the future. Like, I'm not going to go into the many disastrous people who've got lots of children by multiple marriages and should not be in charge of anything. Yes. I'm not going to go into the fact that I'm pretty sure he must have got this idea from Elon Musk because Elon Musk wants 10 votes. I'm not going to go into any of that. I just think it's important to provide this context. JD Vance was really involved with, what became known as the New Right. Basically, the Peter Thiel funded conservative movement that is very, very big on ideas like this. What that meant was he was used to talking. There's no kind way of putting this. He was used to talking to audiences of incels. Incels love hearing this shit. What incels want to hear is that the women who rejected you are going to end up lonely and childless and hating their own lives because they rejected you.
They deserve it.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
But what he's managed to do here, which is quite clever with this audience, is to say not only are these people lonely and miserable because they rejected you, but they're also powerful. Now they're controlling the country. So it's both a revenge fantasy and a persecution fantasy at the same time. Yeah. This is why he has managed to get where he is. It's pretty impressive to be able to put those two things together in a single twisted fantasy that you can summarize with childless cat ladies.
Yeah.
Like, I got to admire the skill when talking to that audience. Obviously, you take that out of its original workshop environment and just put it in front of the people. And people are going to say, what the fuck, man? Yeah. Why does something always go so terribly wrong when Republicans talk about pets? Why does this keep happening? Ever since Mitt Romney in 2012. Why did the only possible female vice presidential candidate sabotage her own campaign by talking about killing a dog? Yeah. Why is JD Vance talking about cat ladies now? But anyway, I think that's an important bit of context for what JD Vance is actually talking about when he's talking about childless cat ladies.
I'll give some more context as well. We need to think about the context in which he was on Tucker Carlson. The context was he was best known in the conservative community that he was trying to win a primary, because this is 2021 in the run up to the primary in Ohio. He was best known as being the guy who hated Trump.
Yes.
And I imagine many of them thought he was a crypto Democrat. And in fact, I think he was and is a crypto Democrat. But he, for whatever reason, decided that his meal ticket was going to be in the Republican Party, and he had to convince them he was on side. And what better way than with their hero, Tucker Carlson?
Yes.
So he had this great break, and he thought to himself, this is July 2021. So at this point in time, he's getting whipped in the primary.
Yes,
race.
yeah.
And he thought, well, this is my meal ticket. If I can get on his side,
That's right.
then I'm going to be whatever religious imagery you want to use, Dave, about being bathed, being washed clean of my sins. I've been purged of my sins, and that they'll take, and that's what happened. It worked. It worked. It actually worked.
Yeah.
Most people would never be able to pull this off. He pulled it off he pulled off a full 180-degree turnaround in like a year or two amongst a group of people who have no trust whatsoever for the left.
Yes.
So that is remarkable, and it did take real skill, like you said.
Yeah.
So that's the context in which those comments were made.
Yes.
Right. It was him doing what he needed to do to overcompensate, essentially, to try and win their trust and to win the trust of Tucker Carlson, which is fine. But as soon as you take it out of that environment, like you said,
Yes.
and that's the thing he didn't plan for. That one day, if he actually succeeded, he would need to be in front of a very different jury.
Yeah.
And that day came this week.
Did he give any thought to how that would sound to, for example, stepchildren who love their step-parents? There's a lot of them out there.
There is. Oh,
Yeah.
I've got a number for you.
Yes.
Nearly 20% of American households with children under 18 include children beyond direct biological descendants. Stepchildren, adoptees, grandkids, foster children, other relatives, and unrelated children.
Yeah.
Nearly 20%. 15.4% of women aged 25 to 49 have fertility issues, according to the CDC. That's a lot of voters.
Yeah.
That's a lot of voters.
And I mean, to use the, preferred parlance of the last week, the term physical stake in the future is weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
It's weird.
We'll get to
right. The idea that there has to be genetic propagation going on. Yeah. Like, if my seed is not involved, I don't care.
I got the best rebuttal of this. The guy who really shone in the JD Vance turf was Pete Buttigieg. He was just doing the rounds.
Of course, yes.
And he was actually named. He was one of the offenders.
Yeah.
And this was one of his takes on the point you just made.
He said, people who don't have children, this is a quote, have no physical commitment to the future of this country.
Wow.
And I just think about how, no physical commitment to the future of this country. Like, when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I didn't have kids back then.
Right.
But I will tell you, especially when there was a rocket attack going on, my commitment to this country felt pretty physical.
That's a pretty good response.
That is a pretty good response.
Just while we're at it, this is his response to another element of that statement as well.
But what's your response to that?
The really sad thing is he said that after Chasten and I had been through a fairly heartbreaking setback in our adoption journey. He couldn't have known that, but maybe that's why you shouldn't be talking about other people's children.
And look how angry he is.
Yes.
So that is the Pete Buttigieg equivalent of punching through a wall.
Yes.
Like, he was so annoyed.
Yeah. And
He's really good at this, Pete Buttigieg.
another thing that makes this weird is adoption is a major cause among conservative Christians who see it as the solution to abortion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, especially like adoption from other countries is a big thing. It's just bad.
It is bad. Even on Fox News, like, Trey Gowdy just kicked him all over the field.
Yeah.
Like, he's just, I'm playing a lot of clips, so I won't play this clip. But it's, he wasn't getting any love anywhere.
No.
really, the love was restricted to the man who couldn't stay on Fox News, Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. No, this is the thing. You've got to be so steeped in new right language games to think that that's a clever point. Yeah, but anyway.
And then obviously, I mean, that was stupid. And then he said so many stupid things after that in 2021 in the lead up to the primary because he did so well off the back of that. He undoubtedly raised so much money.
Yes.
And he became Tucker Carlson's pet. He was on Tucker Carlson all the time.
Yes.
So he just kept on doing it. And so now we've just got this long string of clips. I could spend the next half an hour playing clips if I wanted to, but I won't. Dave's already referred to a few of them. I'll just read one quote. This was in October. He once again was referring to the next generation leaders, the AOCs, the Cory Bookers, the Kamala Harrises. They don't have kids. And so there's this weird way where they want to take our kids and brainwash them so that their ideas continue to exist in the next generation. And I just say, look, leave your hands off our children. Stop trying to brainwash them. Parents get to raise their children. Families get to raise not the state. Not the leaders of the left. If you want to brainwash children, have your own kids to brainwash. Leave your hands off of mine. So that's pretty stupid.
What the fuck?
I don't know what he's referring to.
This is why, I mean, he's really been getting his comeuppance with the weird stuff because for years now, he's been presenting himself as the champion of normality. And he's got this recurring line that he even uses in private emails to people, which we now know about thanks to the New York Times, which is the left is making it impossible for normal people to live their lives.
Yeah.
Like, how is other people adopting their children interfering with your life, JD Vance? Like, this is a sociopath's view of the world. That someone living in a different way from me, that is somehow an affront to me. That somehow disrupts my position at the center of normality.
To be fair, Cory Booker does go around brainwashing everyone's children.
I also loved
Cory Booker.
Yeah, in the original version of this, which was pretty shit. Like, I think you're giving it way too many marks. But when you say 6 or a 7, I'd say that's at least 5.5 marks too high.
And I say out of 10 for being a hack.
Okay, yeah. But
so you might go the other way.
But he says, like, because he said, oh, look at the betting markets. What betting market was he looking at that has Cory Booker riding high, by the way? 2008? Anyway, so he said Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, AOC, Pete Buttigieg. What do they all have in common? Like, pause. Every member of that crowd would be thinking, fucking minorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
What do they all have in common?
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 are black, 1's gay, and 1 is Puerto Rican.
Although, to be fair, these days, that often is the case. When someone wants to make a partisan hit job, it looks like a racist or sexist hit job because every Democrat politician these days is not a white man. Or not a white heterosexual man. So it's like when only 20% or 25% of the group that you're attacking is
except for every potential VP candidate, apparently.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll get to that. When we're talking about the DEI candidate, we'll get to that. But yeah, but anyway, and some of the other things he's talked about. There was a tweet on the tweet also in 2021. Universal daycare is class war against normal people.
Yes,
that's what you're talking
his
about.
favorite thing, normal people.
Yeah. And then he went on to say, it turns out that once again, normal Americans care more about their families than their jobs, and want a family policy that doesn't shunt their kids into crap daycare so they can enjoy more freedom in the paid labor force. So that's pretty stupid. If what you're concerned about is birth rates,
yes,
it's pretty stupid to try and work against the means by which people can have more children.
Yes.
Because, newsflash, most people can't afford to survive on one income.
Exactly.
And so if you don't let them have cheap childcare, they will not have children.
Exactly.
They will have no choice.
And I mean, part of the new right dream is the idea that people will be able to survive on a single income. But things like daycare, no, that's not contributing to that. They think that's all going to be achieved through Mr. Trump's tariffs. But yeah, like once again, just electorally, like, do you have any idea how many Americans work in the daycare industry? How many Americans do use the daycare industry?
Yeah.
You think none of those people vote?
Also,
like the children themselves don't vote, obviously, or at least they don't at the moment. The Vance has the policy proposal that maybe their parents could vote on their behalf, but this is all needlessly electorally suicidal shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of it is particularly needless. Like, for instance...
So you talk about tax policy. Let's tax the things that are bad and not tax the things that are good. If you're making $100,000, $400,000 a year, and you've got 3 kids, you should pay a different, lower tax rate than if you're making the same amount of money and you don't have any kids. It's that simple.
Okay, so the thing that's just so incredible about that is that the child tax credit already exists.
Yes.
And it's incredibly popular. It's probably the most popular policy in America. And he's found a way to take this incredibly popular policy that already exists and say, why can't we do this thing that you're all going to hate and that you hate me for suggesting? He's found the worst possible way to sell something he doesn't need to sell.
Yeah.
That actually, if he just said, why don't we increase this thing that exists, people would go, yes, take my vote. It's incredibly incompetent. It's gifted just how incompetent
criminally
it is.
incompetent. Yes, yeah, giftedly incompetent.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
And and it's funny because even Republicans, this is how awful that was as a sales job.
Yeah.
Even Republicans were having a go at him this week.
Yes.
For this policy that exists. Like Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports.
Who's one of the biggest pieces of shit in the media.
Yes. But he's right on board with these guys.
Yes.
Generally.
Yeah.
But he heard that, and this was his response to something that already exists. This is fucking idiotic. You want me to pay more taxes to take care of other people's kids? Are we sure this dude's a Republican? Sounds like a moron. If you can't afford a big family, don't have a ton of kids.
I can just see him spitting out a massive wad of tobacco after tweeting that. Yeah.
And then this last one, I talked about this a little bit on the Planet America. This has got a lot of reactions. Well, I'm actually slightly uncomfortable. I want to tell you why I'm a little bit uncomfortable after I play it. But it's I'm going to show more empathy than JD Vance does.
Yes. Okay.
But let's just play it.
Yeah.
And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they changed their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages.
I want to show slight more, as I said, more empathy than he has, which is obviously you hear that and you go, well, that's horrific. And that's possibly the worst of all these grabs and all these thoughts, these policies.
Yeah.
But number one, I don't believe he's saying that divorces should be outlawed. He's suggesting they should be discouraged.
Well, he's suggesting that no fault divorce is a mistake.
Yeah, but I know that he's not saying
Yes.
that it should actually be banned. He's just saying, like it's a mistake, exactly. And when you hear that, you go, well, that's just insane. You're saying it's for the kids, but how is it in the kids' interest? Even if you ignore the wife or husband who's a victim of domestic violence, how's it in the kids' interest to be in a family where there's domestic violence?
Yeah.
And I agree with you, but he is a child from a family with domestic violence.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and so I imagine that he has quite complicated feelings about this that he is informed by.
But this once again comes back to JD Vance saying, I am the most normal person in the world.
Yes.
Anyone who hasn't had my experiences and doesn't react to them the same way isn't normal.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Whereas, look at that. Totally normal for a man in his mid-30s to be complaining about the sexual revolution that happened 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And I loved the phrase, changing spouses like they change their underwear.
Yeah.
I just looked up the record for most divorces and marriages in the world. One person is 23.
23.
Yes.
Well, that's some stinky underwear.
I think we've just learned a lot about how often JD Vance changes his undergarments.
Quite possibly. Anyway, I could keep on going, but I don't want to waste time on this. But the point is that there's just an endless trail of this shit.
Yes.
So then he went into damage control. And here's where it gets more interesting for me.
This comment that I made was actually motivated in part by a conversation I had with my wife where, she at the time had 2 babies. We hadn't yet had a third. And she was talking about how she felt this incredible professional pressure to not have kids because it set back her professional advancement. And what a weird society that we've set up where moms who want to work, the thought that a lot of them are having is, I can't have more babies because it's going to be bad for my career. How about we make the workplace more accommodating to working moms and working dads so that we can promote a real culture of life?
First of all, that is very, very different from what he originally said.
Very different.
And quite reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one would argue with that.
Absolutely.
Secondly,
and I do think that the United States should be a lot more like Sweden in that respect.
Yes.
There should be compulsory paternal leave.
I was going to say, literally everything that we just described he's been railing against addresses that issue.
Yes, yeah.
Universal daycare is the kind of thing that makes workplaces more amenable for children, doesn't it?
Yes.
Having a situation where you can leave your violent husband is the kind of thing that creates better situations for mothers in the workplace.
Exactly.
I would have thought.
Yes.
This is a classic dog who caught the car situation where he was the perfect the perfect example of someone who won.
Yeah.
Who won the game of Trump.
Yes.
So few people actually pull it off.
Yes.
And he pulled off perfectly.
Yeah.
Which set him up for complete failure when he actually got to the next stage. Which is really interesting, I think.
I'm honestly surprised that Trump hasn't started making jokes about him openly yet. Like, his aides must be doing everything they can, pleading with him not to openly insult JD Vance. I hope JD Vance appreciates how much golden material Trump is leaving on the table by not making jokks about him.
He's getting close. Like he was asked in that that black journalist the conference about whether JD Vance is ready to be on day one to be president, and he gave a very lengthy answer that did not answer the question.
No, and he basically said the vice president doesn't matter to the election campaign.
Just vote for me. Don't vote for him.
Yeah.
He said about 4 times.
Yeah. Now, that is an amazing answer. Like, I'm not going to try to defend this idiot, but it just doesn't matter. And then JD Vance's, when he was asked about this on, I don't know if it was on Air Force One or it wouldn't have been on Air Force One because Trump's not the president. On whatever plane JD Vance flies around in, he was asked about this on the way to Glendale, and he said, "Oh yeah, Mr. Trump's told me this before, that it's not really about the vice president. Whoever votes is going to be voting for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris." That is just the most incredible answer. Like, yes, Mr. Trump is right. The fact I'm fucking up so much doesn't matter because I don't matter.
Yes. Just before I move on to the weird stuff,
Yes.
I do want to just note,
Yes.
because we're seeing these clips a bit at the moment, that even though he's now trying to reinvent himself to not be a dick,
Yes.
it's too late.
It's really too late.
And he's, in fact, all his defenses are the defenses of a dick.
Yes.
And I want to cite two of them right here. These are probably his two major defenses in his interview with Trey Gowdy, who was honestly just tearing strips of him.
Yes.
This is the first one.
The Democratic Party has become explicitly anti-family in some of their policies. In fact, you just heard Kamala Harris in a Surface clip recently talk about how it was a bad idea to have kids because of climate change anxieties.
Really? Really, JD? Should we play that clip? Yes. Let's play that clip, shall we?
I've heard young leaders talk with me about a term they've coined called climate anxiety. Right? Which is fear of the future and the unknown, of whether it makes sense for you to even think about having children, whether it makes sense for you to think about aspiring to buy a home, because what will this climate be? But because people voted, we have been able to put in place over $1 trillion in investment in our country around things like climate resilience and adaptation.
Okay, now for those who can't speak English, Kamala was clearly saying that some people think like that, not that you should think like that.
No. And by the way, what she's talking about is an increasingly well-documented thing.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly disturbing. Yeah.
Now, you might have found that point from JD Vance unconvincing. I'll tell you who was very convinced by it, Elon Musk. He wrote, Shamala, I love he's getting to the nicknames now,
Jesus.
Just like Trump.
Yeah.
Shamala is an extinctionist. The natural extension of her philosophy would be a de facto holocaust for all of humanity. I think some sociologists should make Elon Musk part of a study about the effects of too much social media. Like his brain is just rotting in front of us as we speak.
I do sometimes wonder.
He used to be a smart guy. He really did.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems like he is the sole audience for the Trump-Vance campaign. It's like, we'll talk about this in a second, but okay, so who thinks that if you're part Indian, you can't be black? Someone who grew up under apartheid's system of racial classification. Who thinks that people should have more votes the more children that they have? Somebody with 10 children.
Yeah.
He really does seem like the main audience of all this stuff.
Yeah, it's a good call. And the next one, by the way, was this one here.
Look at our public policy over the last 4 years and ask, how did we get to this place? How did we get to a place where Kamala Harris is calling for an end to the child tax credit?
That's interesting. That sounds unlikely, given that the child tax credit is something that Democrats are trying to expand at the moment. So it seems unlikely she wanted to call for an end of it.
Yep.
I wonder where that came from. So I looked it up, and it turns out that there's a Daily Caller article about how the Harris campaign rapid response director, Amar Musa, tweeted out the following. J.D. Vance's attacks on childless Americans is even more vile. He called for higher taxes on those without children. Remember, we just referred to that before about how that was just the child tax credit. She obviously didn't understand that, like a lot of people.
Yes.
Didn't understand that. And some J.D. Vance online dunkers noted that was her effectively critiquing the child tax credit. Gotcha. But then J.D. Vance took that as somehow a random staffer tweeting out something that could be interpreted as a self-own about the child tax credit. He took as Kamala Harris herself explicitly calling for the end of the child tax credit.
Yes.
Quite a stretch.
Very, very stretch.
Let's talk about weird.
Yep.
Okay, so this all started with Tim Walz about a week and a half ago now.
Yes.
You look what they're talking about. They went right to division. They did not give us a plan on health care. Donald Trump talked about infrastructure. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris built bridges, built roads. So I think this is going back to the bread and butter, getting away from this division. We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary. and I think bringing back people together, well, it's true. These guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in.
It's a bit of a natural on cable news,
Yes.
Tim Walls. And then it went nuts.
Yeah.
They're just, everyone was doing the weird thing. Like they're literally at least 50 examples of Democrats doing the weird thing.
Yes.
Even Joe Manchin got in on the act. This
Jesus.
is a guy. This is a guy who has zero message discipline. Like, he never goes to the program. He tried, and let's give Joe Manchin credit. He tried.
Why?
No, he tried. He didn't really pull it off.
Okay.
But he tried his darndest.
Okay. Have you got a clip of this?
I do.
Okay.
Well, that was a weird comment. That definitely is weird. And some of the different things and positions they've taken seems fairly weird to me. And weird means basically when you have rational, supposedly very educated, rational people saying things that just are so far out of the mainstream that, you know, I thought I've heard everything as long as I've been around, but there are some things I haven't heard, and that was a very weird way of putting it.
You can tell he was so uncomfortable with using the word. He felt he had to define it.
Yes.
Just in case people didn't know what the word weird meant. But anyway, good man, Joe Manchin. Good try. and Tim Walz was obviously pleased with himself because he even on one of his many appearances, he even explained the thought process behind the weird thing.
Why do you think weird is a more effective attack line against Trump than what Democrats have been done previously, which is argue that he's an existential threat to democracy?
Yeah, and it's an observation on this, and being a school teacher, I see a lot of things. But my point on this is people kept talking about, look, Donald Trump is going to put women's lives at risk. That's 100% true. Donald Trump is potentially going to end constitutional liberties that we have, end voting. I do believe all those things are a real possibility, but it gives him way too much power. Listen to the guy. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind. And I thought we just give him way too much credit. And I think one of the things is when you just ratchet down some of the the scariness or whatever and just name it what it is. I got to tell you, Jake, my observation on this is, have you ever seen the guy laugh? That seems very weird to me that an adult can go through 6.5 years of being in the public eye. If he has laughed, it's at someone, not with someone. That is weird behavior. And I don't think you call it anything else. It is simply what we're observing.
That's a very important explanation because it's as much about the Democrats as it is about the Republicans.
Yes.
He wants to take the fear out of the campaign.
Yeah.
That's very important because fear wasn't working.
Yeah.
And fear, there's experimental studies on this that suggest fear is actually a demobilizing emotion. Like anger is a mobilizing emotion, hope is a mobilizing emotion, fear is a demobilizing one. It actually makes people less likely to do things. This is why Opium Chronicles guy, his motto is like, worry less, do more.
Yeah.
So actually, and it's also a good response to all of the calls that came out after the assassination attempt to, we've got to lower the temperature a bit.
Yes.
Objectively, the temperature has been lowered because they aren't actually talking about Trump as a threat to democracy anymore, even if he is. Instead, they're talking about him as weird. That is lowering the temperature. So taking the fear out of the campaign is actually pretty important, and you can see there's a real difference in the way that Democrats are going about things. They're a lot happier to be involved in politics.
Absolutely. And with the point you make there about the fact that it's the direct opposite of the assassination style rhetoric.
Yes, yeah.
Is a great point because it's the last thing Republicans were expecting.
Yes.
Like it just hits them from a completely different angle. They're all in mode looking for rhetoric that they can condemn.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it just came from a completely different angle, and they had no reply ready for it.
Yeah.
What he didn't say, by the way, he mentioned he was a school teacher, but what he didn't say is that as a school teacher, he knows how bullies work.
Yes, yeah.
And he knows exactly how you deal with a bully.
Yes.
How you bully a bully, essentially.
Yeah.
And this tactic to me had schoolyard rules written all over it.
Yes.
Classic school teachers concept.
Yes.
It was very clever. The other elements I think that's so clever about it is that, I mean, it's based on reality.
Yes.
Like J.D. Vance is weird.
Yes.
Like clearly. And so is Trump.
Yeah.
That's the one thing they have in common.
Yes.
They're all far too online.
Yes.
And the more online you are, the weirder you get, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
These online guys make references to things that offline people simply don't understand.
Yes,
Or
yeah.
don't know the references. It deprives Trump of his superpower,
Yes.
which is to be scary.
Yep.
Trump's been riding on being the Democrats' bogeyman for years.
Yes.
The angrier the Democrats get, the more the Republicans love it.
Yep.
But this is different. This is mockery.
Yes.
It's disempowering.
Yes.
It makes Trump smaller.
Yeah.
It subjects Trump to his personal greatest fear, which is ridicule.
Yes.
Trump, like all bullies, craves being taken seriously. And now he's imparted his psychology on his entire voting base.
Yes.
And so they hate it just as much as he does when he's ridiculed now as well.
Yes. Yeah.
It plays right into the thing you said before, the normal thing with J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
That is Republicans, they have always thought of themselves as real America.
Yes.
The normal people.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Democrats are the weird ones. In
Yes.
fact, that's in the past been a badge of honor for lefties.
It has
to be
been.
weird.
Noah Smith had an extensive Substack post about this.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. Saying that the right hates the weird label because to them it means outgroup.
Yeah.
The left traditionally wore it as pride, but what they mean by it now is this is a return to the politics of the 2010s. But he also makes the point, this is not actually an insult that goes both ways. You turn around and call people on the left weird, it's like they don't care.
No.
Because that's what they've been called their entire lives.
Well, you think about queer.
Yeah.
Like that they completely reclaimed the word queer
Yes.
because if you're part of the left, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So Marco Rubio's devastating response, they call us weird, I call them weirder.
Oh.
The responses of it, there are two ways that you know this is working. First of all, the attempted responses have just amplified the original accusation.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And also, the more you deny it,
Yes.
the weirder you look.
Exactly.
It's like quicksand.
Exactly.
You can't struggle.
The second thing is, it immediately achieved the pinnacle of when you know it's right, which is that Thomas Friedman wrote a very grumpy op-ed, which I think he'd been saving since 2016. Yeah, saying that this was wrong. This is tactically terrible. This is going to turn working class white Trump supporters against Democrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that might be against
already. Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of the many thousands of useless op-eds that have started from this premise that working class white Trump supporters who really love Trump are actually the group that Democrats need to focus on to win elections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen Chung, he sent out a response. Kamala Harris is a creep. Kamala Harris is weird. Voters know it. Oh, that would have hurt. Oh, he just turned it back on you. Oh. Ramaswamy, he tried to take the umbrage route, which was this whole "they're weird" argument from the Democrats is dumb and juvenile.
From the most juvenile politician.
This is a presidential election, not a high school prom queen contest. It's also a tad ironic coming from the party that preaches diversity and inclusion. Win on policy if you can, but cut the crap, please. See, now, I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He does do a bit of that, but also he just sounds like he's having a sook.
Yeah.
Which means you're losing.
Yeah.
We're in the schoolyard now. This is the schoolyard. I mean, he's right about it being juvenile, but that's where the mindset is. There's a whole election campaign. And in the schoolyard, if you care, you lose. He cares.
Yep.
He loses. It's by the way, J.D. Vance couldn't even pretend he didn't care. He couldn't even get to that. At least Ramaswamy acted like he didn't care. Have you seen what happened when the Fox News reporter asked JD Vance about it?
No, I haven't seen this yet. Yeah.
For those who are listening to this,
Yeah.
you need to watch the clip, okay? So have a look at the time, watch the clip. You will not believe how poorly JD Vance hides how wounded he is by this weird thing.
He has a new insult out this week that her and her husband have been using towards you, calling you weird. Does that hurt your feelings? How do you feel about that?
No, not at all. It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Did you see that reaction? Like he just winced and his head rocked back and he's like, no problems. Man.
Now, a lot of people are likening this to the deplorable slur of 2016.
Yeah.
And fearing the backlash. Yeah. This is quite different from that.
You tell us why.
Well, starting with the fact that I don't know of anyone who ever used the word deplorable before I heard Hillary Clinton using it. Okay, so that's the first thing. Deplorable is a weird word. Second, she never intended any broad audience to hear it. She was talking to an audience of donors. She didn't realize that was going to go public.
Yeah.
That is not something that a politician would have said. Third, she was explicitly talking about supporters.
Yeah.
And so that could immediately be turned into, this is what they're saying about you behind your back. Like they're calling you this strange term deplorable. Fourth, deplorable can easily be turned into a badge of honor. People were calling themselves deplorables within hours of this.
Deplorable is a hardcore word. It's negative. It's judgmental.
It is.
It's the same thing as saying they're scary.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the opposite. This is dismissive.
Yes.
This is I couldn't give a shit.
Yes. Yeah. You can see already from the reaction to this versus the reaction to deplorables, where Democrats were scrambling from the moment this was heard to say this is a mistake. Like everyone was like, this is a mistake. We don't want to characterize Trump's supporters in this way. It's been misunderstood, blah, 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 blah. You're not getting that same response this time.
Also, the proof of the pudding that this is not like deplorable is just look how Trump reacted to it.
Yes.
I mean, what is this just plain weird?
Listen,
American families?
The whole thing is a con job. Just plain weird. You know who's plain weird? She's plain weird. She's a weird person. Look at her past. Look at what she does.
Game over. when all he can do is, I know you are. I said you are, but what am I? You know you've won.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. Okay, so now that I've spent quite a bit of time saying how clever it is, and I think it is clever.
Yeah.
I'll give Tim Walz clever points for that. Let me tell you why I hate it. Because I do hate it.
There has been a bit too much self-congratulation. But yes. Okay. Why do you hate it, Chaz?
I think it's very effective. I've got no doubts about that.
Yeah.
And I get that these are high stakes.
Mm-hmm.
We spent the last 40 minutes talking about how much JD Vance has played with fire.
Yes.
He's certainly played with fire.
Yes.
He's done plenty of trolling himself. And by all means, go after his ideas, the weird thing. With the weird thing. Yeah, especially his trollish ideas. Call them weird.
Yeah.
It's a good attack. I like it. That's good. Call the cat lady comments weird. No problems. Go after Trump with it, please.
Yes.
He deserves everything he gets.
Yes, yeah.
No complaints from me. But to me, Vance clearly is trying to fit into Trump's world. Right? JD Vance is not the problem. JD Vance is a symptom of the problem. Right?
Okay. Yes, yeah.
He's obviously a natural kind of he's naturally a weird guy. Like he actually is.
Yeah.
For real. Like he's naturally a nerd. He's a bit spectrumy. He's a bit geeky. He's the kind of guy who gets bullied at school. Him. I bet he was bullied at school. Think about where he went to school. I bet he was. And it feels to me like people are beating up on him because it's easy. I think he's a soft target. I think when it started, he wasn't. But as it went on, I think he's became increasingly a soft target. I think they should be beating up on Trump, not JD Vance. JD Vance is not going to win this election for Trump. JD Vance doesn't matter. This is just, I think this is fun. I think this is beating up on someone who's part, like who's the easiest person to beat up in a team that you were trying to beat up on, and it's enjoyable. That's what I think.
I think you're wrong.
Yep, go on.
I think that Democrats have recognized that, yes, normally a vice presidential nominee isn't an important part of the campaign, but they can be if they're badly chosen enough. The polls at the moment suggest a very close race. There's, Trump being Trump. Everyone knows everything there is to know about Trump. There is never any new information coming in about Trump. JD Vance is the rare piece of new information.
Yep.
Right? He's the rare new thing that could actually affect people's perceptions in different ways. And especially if people pay attention to how old Trump actually is, and the fact that he actually could become the president just from Trump dying in office. Sarah Palin did actually make people question both John McCain's judgment and similar dynamic. John McCain, by the standards of those days, was considered an incredibly old candidate.
Yeah.
He was in his early 70s. And he wasn't in the best of health. And there was a lot of discourse about, do we really want this person being, as people kept saying, one heartbeat away from the presidency? I think there is a lot to the, a lot to the saying that a vice presidential nominee never wins the election. Although there's a possible exception to that. It's often believed that Lyndon Johnson helped get Kennedy over the line by delivering the South. I don't know if there's any actual evidence of that, but it's, this is often believed. But there are plenty of examples of where a vice presidential candidate actually hurts.
Yep.
Thomas Eagleton having to withdraw in 1972. I mean, I'm not saying that George McGovern had the greatest chance anyway, but maybe he would have won more than one state. If he had a stable vice presidential pick. Sarah Palin was bad. Paul Ryan did Mitt Romney absolutely no favors in 2012, where once again there was very little that was actually moving the dial in either way. But after Paul Ryan's debate with Joe Biden, you basically knew the contest was over. Vice presidential nominees can matter. And Democrats have been given this absolute gift in JD Vance.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to pity someone who, with that little political experience and who has enjoyed this much praise being heaped on him for the most dubious reasons for so long, suddenly gets to be the vice presidential candidate.
Yep.
That, has spent 4 years or longer just talking shit about all kinds of people in order to build up his support base with incels and other Peter Thiel types. Yeah, for that to then come out, I've got absolutely no sympathy whatsoever.
Look, I don't disagree with a lot of what you said there.
Yes.
It's all very reasonable.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
I suppose what I would say is, number one, I'm not saying you can't criticize the guy. And I'm not saying you can't attack the guy.
Yeah.
I just feel a lot of the attacks to me feel very personal. I feel that we move from, those cat lady comments are weird too. You are a weirdo.
Yes.
Very, very, very quickly. And I think that a lot of the attacks I've seen, in my view, on the personal side of the line.
Once again, I'm not as online as you, so maybe I'm not seeing the bad stuff.
Well, I've even mentioned the word couch.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because that's all part of it as well.
Okay, yes. He's got a legitimate grievance against AP for that.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah, but AP screwed up.
Yes.
By escalating it and just rewarding the joke and then encouraging even more of it. But a number of Democrats have encouraged it along as well. J.B. Pritzker just can't speak without using the word couch. He just loves it, right? And that whole thing, that just, once again, I'm not denying it's funny. It is funny. And the people who just don't give a shit about politics, they're just having a good time.
Yes.
Cool. Right? Cool. Play on. But in terms of I know that there are people out there. I know that there are people out there who are doing it, who are thinking, I just want to hurt this guy. And it just makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I have been bullied. I have bullied others. I'm not going to pretend I haven't.
Yeah.
But and I've felt pretty bad afterwards. And I've just got that feeling.
Okay,
right now.
no, that's fair enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll play a clip to illustrate what I'm talking about. This has got nothing to do with being clever anymore, what I'm about to play. This is Adam Kinzinger, who's just, he's lost his way.
He's pretty awful.
There's something about, I guess, when J.D. Vance is putting on his eyeliner in the morning, he's thinking about how can I offend the most people I possibly can.
When he wakes up and puts his eyeliner on in the morning. I mean, come on. That is just pure high school.
Yeah.
Like it's just, that's not clever. That's just being a bitch. That's what that is.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
That is Adam Kinzinger's whole stage.
Yeah. It's anyway, and again, it's like I know we're not in Michelle Obama land anymore.
No.
We're definitely not doing any you go high, they go low stuff. I'm not even saying you should do that.
No.
I just feel like I feel that this is accelerating evolution so that future candidates become worse.
Okay, yes.
And we have played this game before. We know where it leads. Yeah. Anyway, I've talked enough about this, but I don't want to go too heavy on it because I actually do think it's brilliant.
Yes.
and there's a part of me that's delighted by it because it is funny. I mean,
Yes.
I some of my best work was in the schoolyard. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, I did bully some people, but and that part of me is not dead. But then the little angel on my shoulder is going, "Oh, come on, Chaz, what are you doing, mate?"
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, let's talk about Kamala not being black.
Okay.
Talking about terrible attacks.
Okay, so it's worth remembering that before this event actually took place, so this was Trump's event with the National Association of Black Journalists. The National Association of Black Journalists was under all kinds of attack for agreeing to this. After it, you've got Anthony Scaramucci saying, whoever let Trump agree to that should be fired. So this was a what would you call it? A panel discussion, a Q&A.
Yeah.
Went for 35 minutes, which that must be the shortest event involving Trump that has ever taken place.
Yeah.
Like, that's how bad it was that Trump wanted to leave after 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Trump has never left anything after 35 minutes before.
It kind of had the shits before it started because they started really late.
Yes.
And then the first question was he just got drilled. It was one of those moments when I don't know if you guys what kind of climate you all live in, but if you live in a climate like Sydney, say hypothetically, and then you get on a plane and you get off the plane somewhere tropical, like say North Queensland or in Bali or something, and you as soon as the plane door opens, you just get hit by the heat.
Yes, yeah.
That was what Trump got hit by.
That was what it was like. He was basically asked this question, given all the racist things you've said in the past, why should black people
every
trust
one of
you?
them.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing, and this is going to become a recurring theme, they didn't say or suggest that he was racist at any point. The only time the word racist was used was when they were talking about him calling black journalists racist.
Yes.
Because this is a very important discursive development. People don't call Trump racist anymore because they see it as counterproductive. It's an important thing to keep in mind. So I don't know whether this was a calculated or planned response that he had to say that Kamala Harris only ever identified as Indian before and is now just pretending to be black.
Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect either
historically black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that she is
somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
That's the classic. I think someone should look into it. Like someone needed to look into Obama's birth certificate.
Like that deserves it's always sunny in Philadelphia place card with the episode card with the music saying like the gang tries minority outreach. Or something. Like that. I didn't know she was black. Suddenly she turned black. Like you can hear the response in the room to that.
By the way, I know
Yes.
you're going to keep on going, but there's just no way that wasn't planned. Like,
No, okay.
like that answer had nothing to do with the question. Like they're asking about whether she was a DEI
so
candidate.
he actually thought this was going to be a good response. Okay, now first of all, it's hardly worth even pointing out just how wrong this is.
Oh yeah.
That she identified as black from a very young age. She's talked about this a lot. She's talked about how her Indian mother raised her and her sister as black because that was how the world was going to see them. She went to not only a historically black college, but the most famous historically black college. Like everyone, I would imagine, knows what Howard University is.
And she looks black.
Yes,
It
she
doesn't
does.
matter what she says. She looks black.
And this is the thing. And I mean, we shouldn't even...
She can't hide it.
We shouldn't even have to make this point, but okay, let's make it. Race is a very complicated thing.
Yeah.
There are many people in the United States who don't come from the majority African-American heritage of descendants of enslaved people who were brought to the United States.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people whose connection with the black world comes in other ways.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who are partly of African descent and partly of another descent, like Barack Obama, for example, who identify as black. One of the reasons for that is because the black-white binary has been so powerful throughout American history that for most of American history, the actual thinking from whites was if you had any African descent at all, that made you black.
Yeah.
Right? It's the one drop rule.
Yeah.
So certainly for most of American history, anyone who looked like they had any kind of African heritage, they were black.
Yeah.
They expected to be black. They were going to be treated as black when it came to the police, when it came to the education system. The fact that somebody who is not exclusively of African heritage identifies as black, this is not something new. This is not in any way unusual. And yeah, for Trump to be harping on this is, once again, to use the word of the moment, it is weird. Now, a white man should never set himself up as the arbiter of who counts as a member of a minority group.
That's all he does.
It's who counts as black. Now, I've made this point before in reference to Joe Biden. Do you remember 4 years ago? It was in May 2020.
Yes.
Biden was doing an interview with Charlemagne the God.
Yes.
Who, by the way, has endorsed Harris, even though he spent years flirting with Trump.
Yeah.
He said to Charlemagne the God, if you haven't made up your mind between me and Trump, you ain't black.
Yeah.
Now, that was instantly understood to be a mistake. I talked about this on PEP.
You did.
And I have not been able to find the episode because finding things in those early episodes is like
Very
finding
difficult.
a needle in a haystack. I thought that it might be the June the 3rd episode of 2020. So I had a look at that. And I just want to apologize to everyone, but especially you, for how grumpy I was during that episode. I don't know if you remember this, but so this was a special midweek one that we did about George Floyd riots. And I think I was kind of wrestling with the seriousness of it all.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I was... I was unnecessarily testy about things. Like at the start of the episode, you were holding your laptop up playing the Dutch disco pep song. And I was like, put that down.
I haven't played songs on PEP for a long time.
Yeah.
I should get back into
At
that.
the end, I said that Steve King should bury himself in a cornfield. Anyway, so I apologize to everyone for how grumpy I was during that episode. But the point being, I haven't been able to find the one that I talked about that. But there is evidence that I have very fairly applied this critique to Biden as well. You
Yes.
can't, as a white person, set yourself up as an arbiter of who is black and who is not. Now, Biden, to his credit, realized he had made a mistake.
Yeah.
And he apologized. He said, I shouldn't have tried to be such a wise guy. But that, by the way, is exactly what Biden sounded like 4 years ago. Exactly. Pitch perfect impersonation before he started sounding like Raymond and Peter. So, yeah, this isn't a problem that's unique to Trump. But this is something that most white people stopped doing a long time ago, or at least realized was a bad look. Okay.
Also, Joe Biden did it off the top of his head. I'm telling you, Trump premeditated that.
Yes.
They had all their inverted commas evidence ready to go directly afterwards. It was planned. What, you think it's a coincidence that he happened to say that at the most black function he's ever going to address? Of course he did it on purpose. I mean, his reasoning, I can't even fathom. But he definitely did it on purpose.
Well, I couldn't figure out, has he just given up on black outreach?
I think
for all the discourse that was happening, he's making real inroads with black men in particular. Did he just decide, fuck it, they're not voting for me?
I think it's a tantrum.
Yeah.
I think it might be a tantrum. I think he's just really angry.
He might have, he does seem to have this genuine belief that black people hate immigrants, that African Americans hate immigrants. And there's a lot of sort of white folklore about this, that because they're often the poorest, they'll be the ones who are most hurt by immigration, blah, blah, blah. And so I think he possibly thinks that that's true and that he can somehow turn minority against minority. But you heard the reaction that he got to that.
Yeah, it didn't work out like he hoped. But
in that room.
No, I think he's just got the shit so much with Kamala Harris and just how well the last 2 weeks has worked for her.
Yeah.
When he thought he was home and hosed.
He absolutely thought he was. That you wouldn't choose JD Vance if you didn't think you were home and hosed.
Yeah. And in particular, she's taken away his precious black vote. She's improved 10 points amongst the black vote in the polls in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He's been working on them for 6 months and they disappeared in a day.
Yes.
And that I reckon that just annoyed him. And so
Yeah.
it's like, well, screw you. This is and he thought maybe, I don't think it was much rationality to it. I think he just thought, maybe if I show them how she's, how she's not one of them and how she's exploited them and how she treats them like shit, then they'll show her.
Yeah.
And he just didn't think the next step. It's like the old question mark Underpants Gnome theory thing. You had step 1, I act like a dick.
Yeah.
Step 3, I win the black vote. Question mark in between for step 2. What's there? Who knows? But yeah, anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
I don't know if there's really that much more to say about this.
Okay, well, I'll say a couple of things.
Okay.
First of all, I'm going to say that it took me, no exaggeration, less than 10 seconds of Googling to find the San Francisco Chronicle article in 2004, which the first sentence was, Kamala Harris was sworn in Thursday as the first black woman in California history to serve as a district attorney, pledging to be smart on crime, So this was when she first won.
Yes.
This is the day she won.
Yeah.
Called the black woman. How about that?
Yes.
The second thing, which I'd like to point out, is that I know I said a few these things on Planet America, but you can only have so much fresh material. Second thing is, Trump put up on his rally that night.
Yeah.
This big headline from, I think it was Business Insider, I think it was.
Yeah.
California's Kamala Harris becomes first Indian American U.S. Senator. He was very proud of that one.
Yeah.
This is a dude who does not believe a single thing he sees in the press.
Yes, yeah.
Who's citing one headline from a newspaper as proof.
You know why they went with that headline?
Why is that?
Because if they'd said first black woman to become US Senator, that wouldn't have been true.
That's right.
First woman to become US Senator.
Not true.
That wouldn't have been true. When you're looking for a headline about first something, you choose the thing that is actually first, which is she was the first person of Indian descent to become a US Senator.
Yes.
That's why they ran that headline. Yes. The headline wasn't first exclusively Indian person.
No, it wasn't.
No.
It wasn't. And yeah, it's I also just like to make. We probably shouldn't even engage in it, but I just want to make that, like, if there's anyone out there who's just thinking, well, sometimes she calls herself Indian and sometimes she calls herself black. I sometimes call myself Australian and sometimes call myself Italian. It depends the context I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm not running for office. Like, it's just
no.
When you have multiple identities, you sometimes use one more predominantly than the other just because of the surrounds and the circumstances.
Yeah.
There's nothing sinister about
it. No, that's right. It all depends on where you are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And can anyone show us any evidence whatsoever of her exploiting it? Like, because there's a headline doesn't mean you're exploiting it.
And I mean, this is another thing going on here, that Trump's followers contain a lot of people who believe that blacks are given all kinds of unfair advantages in America. And so for them, it makes complete sense that, of course someone would just, after spending a life identifying as one thing, start identifying as black in order to, in order to profit from it. In this case, in order to get all the way to the White House. That makes total sense for them. The same accusations were leveled at Barack Obama. There were a lot of people saying Barack Obama always used to be mixed race, but, and he used to be known as Barry. Why is he now suddenly black?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Barack Obama treatment with Kamala Harris at the moment. There's also I've read, I don't know how many articles about her being lazy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Barack Obama's lazy.
Yes.
Originally. There's the DEI candidate. They used to call Barack Obama the affirmative action candidate before DEI existed.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah. And I mean, Barack Obama had even explained in his autobiography that because he grew up in a place which had very little connection to African-American culture, that, he did have to learn how to be African-American when he moved from Hawaii to the continental United States. He owned the process of construction. And those attacks did not work at all because anybody, if they're being honest with themselves, could understand that somebody who looks like Barack Obama is black.
Yeah. But also, on top of that, the reason why these attacks in particular aren't going to work, even more so than the Barack Obama attack, because not only are we 15 years on, but on top of that, Kamala Harris never runs on being black.
No.
She never even mentions it.
Yeah.
Like I was just thinking the other day about her first ad.
Yeah.
How there were, like the Freedom ad.
Yeah.
Just almost every single person in the ad was black.
Yeah.
They never used the word black. Like, it was, I'm sure it was intentional.
Yes.
But the point is she's not going, I'm going to be the first black female. She's not doing any of that shit.
No.
Like, Hillary Clinton did the first woman. Like, John made this point on Planet America. I'm stealing his point.
Yeah.
But Kamala Harris is not doing that at all.
No, she's not. No.
Which is why this doesn't ring true.
Yes.
It doesn't ring true that she's exploiting her race because she's not even using her race. Like, she's been smart about it. It's implicit rather than explicit.
I think another thing is, so Trump and Vance, and they are desperate for someone to call them racist. Absolutely desperate.
Yes.
For Trump, you can see he's really getting back to, how can I turn this back into 2016?
Yeah.
Like, he's absolutely desperate to be called racist. As I said, people are actually avoiding calling him racist. Some of the responses, Karine Jean-Pierre said it's repulsive, but they're actually avoiding calling him racist. And it's important to note how much the racial politics of America changed between 2016 and 2020.
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, maybe Trump has forgotten that apart from that, the definitive, because he blames everything on the pandemic. No, one of the definitive events was the Black Lives Matter protests, which were, this is what we were talking about on June 3rd, 2020. They were the biggest protest in the United States since the civil rights movement, and something like 2/3 of Americans agreed with them. There were those remarkable polls showing that a majority of people in Minnesota agreed with setting a police car on fire. Yes, it's true that in 2016, it was very counterproductive for people to call Trump a racist. In 2020, one of the central themes of the whole year was that Donald Trump is a racist. Like, it didn't work for him in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's play Kamala Harris's response to show you what you're talking about.
We all here remember what those 4 years were like. And today, we were given yet another reminder. This afternoon, Donald Trump spoke at the annual meeting of the National Association of Black Journalists. And it was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better.
That's a much better reaction than
it is.
Than the racist thing. It's a good reaction. Like it's got a bit of the weird about it, where it's just dismissive.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than.
And I mean, there's a lot of value to just letting him go like this. Just let him remind everyone. Oh fuck yes, he's Donald Trump. Right. He's not just some guy who heroically survived a shooting.
Yeah.
He's Donald Trump. Like, do we want another 4 years of this shit on our TV all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some Indian correspondence here from Tonko. I would love to hear, this was before this incident, by the way.
Okay, yep.
I would love to hear about whether Kamala being of Indian heritage ingratiates her to the Indian American electorate and whether they reside in any of the swing states. Do you know much about the Indian American population?
Look, I do not know enough about this / anything about this to be able to answer this. I should look, either about the distribution or about how they feel about Kamala.
That's okay. I looked up distribution.
Okay.
And the answer is, ain't going to help her much. California, New York, New Jersey. That's where the Indians are.
Yep.
So it's all very blue state. So it might help congressional races in the area, but it's no, that's not going to help her at all, I think. We've already started to talk about polling. Shall we keep on going?
Let's keep on going.
Okay. Yeah. So some of the recent polls. New York Times Siena had Trump ahead by 48 to 47 amongst likely voters.
Yep.
Biden had been 6 points behind in the previous poll. RFK was down to 5 points.
Yes.
5%. Harris seemed to have won plenty of votes back from RFK. 48% of registered voters had a favourable view of Trump, which is the highest he's had by a mile.
Yes, yep.
Obviously, that's after the shooting and the convention.
Yes.
So it's probably a bit of a bounce.
Yeah.
Harris went up from 36% in February to 46% approval in this poll.
Yep.
With 49% disapproval, down from 54% in February. Interestingly, the double haters dropped from 20% to 8%, which is really interesting.
Yes.
Like, the last two elections has been all about double haters. Well, let's see what happens. She might start getting hated again. But if she doesn't, then this election might be different in some way. Well, who knows what result that means. 87% of voters in the New York, I love this, 87% of voters in the New York Times Siena poll say they approve of Biden's decision to stand aside. 9% disapprove. I don't want to back over poor old Biden, but here are things more popular than the 87% of people who agreed with Biden's decision to step down, according to the New York Times Siena polls. They wrote this article, just going, historically, the things they have found higher than 87% in a poll. Always or sometimes tip at a sit-down restaurant, got 92%. Have an unfavourable opinion of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, 91%. Approve of George W. Bush's, remember I mentioned him before, approve of George W. Bush's handling of his job in September 2001, 90%. Say having an affair is morally unacceptable. 89%. Getting close. Believe marijuana should be legal for medical use. 88%. And then 87%. And they're on their all-time list. 87% said Joe Biden made the right decision.
Wow.
The thing's directly lower than 87%. Say small business has a positive effect on the country. 86%.
Less popular than Biden going.
Say cloning humans is morally unacceptable. 85%. Keep their smartphone near them almost all the time during waking hours. 83%. More people supported Joe Biden stepping down than keep their smartphone near them. I love that. That was great to share.
That is great.
Okay. ABC Ipsos poll, 43% respondents view Kamala Harris favourably, up from 35% a week earlier. CNN, Harris doing 8 points better amongst black voters, 6 points better amongst Hispanic voters, 1 point better amongst white voters. So she's not losing the white voters, even as she's gaining.
Yes.
Because I mean, and she may yet. This is obviously a honeymoon.
Yes.
But that's what I've been hanging for.
Yep.
I've been expecting her to gain in black and Hispanic votes and lose on white votes.
Yeah.
Not so far. YouGov, Harris leading 46-44. Last week she trailed by 3. Compared to 2 weeks ago, she's 5 points better than she was 2 weeks ago. And she's 5 points ahead of where Biden was 2 weeks ago. She's 7 points ahead of where she was 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Black voters up 11 points to 74%. 74% is getting towards normal.
Yes.
Hispanic voters up 5 points to 50%. Women up 7 points to 50%. Adults up under 30, up 7 points to 56%. Leads Trump by 1 point amongst independents, 40-39. 64% of Harris supporters are extremely or very enthusiastic about voting this year, compared to 72% of Trump voters. It's getting close. 39% believe Harris will win in November, to 43% who believe Trump will win in November. That's getting close as well.
I didn't see what the last numbers were on Biden versus Trump on that metric, but it must have been like 80% thought that Trump were going to win.
Yeah, I would have thought so. The Nate Silver model has gone from giving Trump a 66% chance of victory 2 weeks ago to a 57% chance of victory now.
This is, just to reiterate, this is the Silver Bulletin, not 538.
Not 538. 538 is much more conservative than the Silver Bulletin.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't think they've actually updated their forecast.
Yeah, like, I mean, they basically all the time now have like 50-50, 49-51.
Yes. Yeah.
2%. Like, and look, and there's reason for that. A lot can happen.
Yes.
Like, it's okay to be conservative.
Yes. Yeah.
But just so you know, that's different. Yeah.
Yes.
Look, these are all obviously great numbers for her, but she's still losing.
Yeah.
She's in the middle of a honeymoon and she's still losing.
I think looking at the Cook political report, so they have their averages. I think the important one to look at is the comparison between where Harris is now and where Biden was in the last polls that they took in 2020.
Yep.
Because yes, that was Biden got the popular win by 7 million votes, but, 40,000 votes in the swing states that decided it. And I think it probably is still the case that she is going to need to effectively win by a lot in order to win. And my read on it is she's basically, if you look at it as a line between where Biden was just before he bowed out, where she needs to be to win, I would estimate she's about halfway to where she needs to be. Because looking at the Cook numbers, so currently she has, according to their averages, 72% of the black vote. Biden had 90 in 2020. She has 32% of the white non-college vote. Biden had 36% of that in 1990. She has 46% of the over 65 vote. Biden had 48% of that in 1990. She has about 50% of the Latino vote. Biden had 60% of that in 1990. She has around I think it's around 60% of the 18 to 35 vote.
About that.
Sorry, my memory's failing. But Biden had more.
You're doing pretty well.
Yeah. I can't remember. But so the point is, she's doing a lot better with all these groups now than Biden was doing a few weeks ago. But
not as well as Biden.
Yeah, I'd say she's about halfway to where Biden actually was with these groups when he won in 2020. And maybe she doesn't need to be as good with all of those groups as Biden was.
But importantly,
yes,
as soon as the honeymoon ends, she falls back. So she needs to get ahead of that.
There's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Trump is also having a honeymoon at the moment. It might not be as obvious, but Trump's approval rating being higher than they've ever been before, that is clearly related to things that have happened over the last few weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So both of them have this honeymoon momentum happening at the moment.
Yeah.
Both of them could potentially see it fall off.
Yep.
Maybe it won't, though, because we don't have historical guidance on what's happening now. We've never had a president drop out of the race so late that then another nominee has come in without a contested process at all. At least not in the contemporary period of politics. We have not had someone survive an assassination attempt since 1912. And Theodore Roosevelt, which means we don't have historical guidance on how long these effects are going to last. We can't really predict these with any confidence. By the way, do you know the Theodore Roosevelt story?
But he got shot in his Bible, or was it a book?
It was his speech that he had ready to go.
Speech, that's right.
50-page speech. Yeah. So he got shot by this shopkeeper by the name of Shrink.
Shrek.
Shrink,
close.
The shopkeeper said he had been told to do it by the ghost of William McKinley.
Who also got assassinated.
Yeah. So this is, back before there were movies and Taxi Driver and Jodie Foster, this is the sort of motivation that people had for shooting presidents.
Yeah.
Because Roosevelt was such an experienced hunter, he deduced that because he wasn't coughing up blood, the bullet hadn't penetrated his lung. So he's like, I'm fine to give the speech.
He finished the speech.
He finished the speech. It took him 90 minutes. He said stops more than a bullet to stop a bull moose. And he even told the crowd not to tear the assassin apart because he was harmless. He's like, this guy's just disturbed, clearly. The police can take him away. That's okay. He lost. I mean, he was never going to win that election.
Yeah, sure.
Woodrow Wilson did suspend his campaigning, but probably because he didn't even feel that he needed to. The point is, we've got no historical guidance on how long these effects are going to last.
Fair enough. I just got to say, I really like, though, the fact that the competence of the Secret Service has changed so little in the last 100 years that they just let the guy stay there. There's no problems. It's all good. You can just join the audience. That's about the level of protection that they have these days as well. Yeah. It's good.
So, I mean, certainly nobody should be complacent about Harris's chances at this point. She is behind. The polling at this point, I would say, is quite chaotic. And you see this when you look at the swing state polls. I mean, the average...
They're huge.
They're
all over the place.
Yeah, they are. Like, there was a Bloomberg poll that showed Harris up by 11 in Michigan.
Yeah.
That is the same poll that actually showed Biden ahead of Trump after the debate.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not the most reliable one. Although, having said that, the fact that it's possible to get a poll that shows her up by 11 does show she's probably doing pretty well in Michigan. There's also, there are so many of these polls that I've just never heard of before, and that are sponsored by dubious characters. So I think we're going to have to wait for high quality polling of the swing states before we really get an idea of how this race is going.
Fair enough. Do you want to talk about Project 2025?
Yes, it's announced that it is finishing its work.
Oh, we barely knew you.
Now, this isn't even true. Okay, first of all, its major work was that policy document.
Yeah.
Say they're finishing their work now. I don't know what they're even talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
they wrote the document. The document's written.
Yeah.
It's there in black and white.
Yeah.
Like, you could shoot it and Theodore Roosevelt would survive.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know what they mean when they say they're finishing their work, or they've finished tidying up the office.
Yeah, I
don't know. But they also said, but we're not disbanding the recruitment operation. Right. So this is what was described as the conservative LinkedIn that would recruit, have all these people ready to go for day one of a Trump presidency. No, that's still going. That was the single most substantive part of Project 2025.
Yeah.
That was the most consequential part of it. That was what was going to find all of the civil servants who are going to replace everyone they're going to fire. In terms of actually making this stuff work, that was the most important part of it. That is still going.
Yeah, and it's the part that Trump's most likely to use.
Yes.
It's not like he has 4,000 people lying around
Exactly.
to join the administration.
Exactly. Okay, so why are they saying that they've finished it? Because the Trump campaign has been putting a lot of pressure on them to finish it, because nobody believes the Trump campaign when they keep denouncing Project 2025 in increasingly strong and funny terms.
Yes.
Like, it's bleak, it's abysmal. I don't even know who these people are, that included people from my previous administration.
Yeah.
So Paul Dans, who's the head of it, has stepped down.
Yep.
I'm sure he will find a near identical sinecure within seconds. So I don't know that actually means very much. But there was a fantastic memo by Chris LaCivita.
Yep, I got it here.
Yes, could you read it out, please?
President Trump's campaign has been very clear for over a year that Project 2025 had nothing to do with the campaign, did not speak for the campaign, and should not be associated with the campaign or the president in any way. Reports of Project 2025's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. It will not end well for you.
Chris LaCivita, what I like about him is the way he uses the word end as a verb very effectively. Yeah. Like when Larry Hogan said, Americans should respect the rule of the jury. He's like, you just ended your campaign. Yeah. That, of course, was immediately undermined by Trump endorsing Larry Hogan. But, he's getting really upset because the heritage people would not stop talking about Project 2025.
Yeah.
And about how great it was going to be that they were going to make all these lives of these civil servants so miserable. They're gloating about all these people that they're going to fire, say, hopefully they'll find fulfilling lives elsewhere, blah, blah, blah. And talking so much about, we got 60% of the program enacted for Reagan, and we got whatever percentage they were claiming in the last Trump administration. No, they're not going to stop talking about this. No. The only way to get them to stop is to actually declare it over. Yeah. And it's not even over.
Yeah.
So Project 2025, that Democrats have been trying to highlight it for a long time. Because it's full of stuff that's incredibly unpopular.
Yeah.
Where I think that really started getting traction was after the Biden debate, when it's like, there is no affirmative case to make for Biden anymore. There absolutely none. Yeah. This, and then after the shooting, it's like, we can't even run against Trump anymore. We've just got to run against Project 2025. So that's when Paul Krugman starts writing to forget about Trump, focus on Project 2025. That's the real thing. I think, did I mention I'd noticed on the day that Trump was shot, obviously very big news day, I noticed on the Washington Post's most read section, it was, what is Project 2025? That was clearly a mass clicking operation going on. But people trying to say, no, don't look at the photo of Trump covered in blood. Work out what Project 2025 is. And of course there was the great BET, Project 2025, look it up.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah, whenever I say something in the media or write something that people perceive as being unnecessary, as being not harsh enough on Trump, like where I said, he's not going to say he's ending elections. People who get outraged at that, their immediate response is, read Project 2025.
Yeah.
So, it's become an incredibly salient thing it is basically Trump's other running mate at this point. And the denials just don't work. They just don't work because everybody knows Trump doesn't care that much about the nuts and bolts of most policy areas, with a few notable exceptions. Foreign policy, he's very hands-on. Immigration, everything that happens in there is going to be like directly Trump. He's going to have a huge hand in the way that. But most other stuff, environmental policy, everyone knows he's going to be quite happy to outsource that to Heritage. The other thing is, there's so much stuff in there that comes from the first Trump administration or comes from the Trump campaign. Like the whole, you fire 50,000 civil servants, that's Schedule F.
Yeah.
The Heritage Foundation didn't come up with that. Trump came up, well, I don't know if Trump came up with it personally, but his presidency came up with that.
Well, that's what this is. Project 2025 are his biggest fans trying to make his dreams come true.
Peter Navarro spoke at the RNC.
Yes.
Yeah, said he'd gone to jail so the rest of you wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
It was one of the weirdest speeches.
I was going to say, on the environment thing, that's a weird... Sorry, just before I make this point, just what you just said. I mean, it's true. He said it like 3 times.
Yes.
I went to jail so you don't have to. And you go, hang on, so in what world, if you just escaped jail, in what world was I going to jail? I don't understand. What mechanism by which were they going to get me into a jail because you didn't go?
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
This is why this is because the Jesus analogy, he did X for your Y.
Yeah.
It's penetrated everything so much
really
that everyone's using it now.
And you referred to the 2020 PEPs.
Yes.
Remember how even back in 2020, one of my pet peeves was that phrase, they're not trying to get me, they're trying to get you.
I remember how much you
I'm
hated
just
that.
standing in the way. I hated that so much.
Ahead of your time.
Yes, and now it's just, as you say, it's just everywhere, that thought.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I was going to say that I completely forgot what I was going to say. that's a bit of a Biden moment.
Okay, let me just throw in something.
Yes.
Completely random.
Yes.
I apologize to...
I remembered.
I apologize to all of the doctors whose business was based entirely on dealing with Dr. Dave inflicted audio injuries.
Hopefully they're behind us.
That we've now fixed.
Well, I'd say we've 100%
Sorry about that. All the eardrum perforation specialists out there that we were helping.
We're on the way. We're on the way. Every week is going to get better.
Okay, so...
yes, well, I was just going to just pick you up on when you were saying that Trump doesn't care about the environment, the environmental law. He'll just pick up whatever the Heritage Foundation said about that. Look, I think that's true.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit.
No.
And whoever he appoints, who's probably going to be associated with Heritage, is going to just... undoubtedly just lift a whole bunch of stuff.
He's a very good example of someone with a lot of children who clearly doesn't care about the future at all.
That's a great example.
Yes.
But he also is not going to invest one moment of effort to try and make those things come true.
No.
And the Democrats are going to be resisting all the way.
Yeah.
Now, if they might not have any power to resist, depending on the numbers after this election.
Yeah.
But if they have any method of resistance whatsoever, if the filibuster exists, or if they hold a house or close to a house or something like that, like Trump's not going to lift a finger for all this Project 2025
it's
shit.
true. So,
it's,
because Project 2025 knows how hard it is to get anything through Congress, not everything, but a lot of things that they were talking about were things that could be done by executive action. But Trump would have to take those executive actions and would have to deal with all the legal shit that comes,
and the bad press, depending on the action.
Yeah. This was also one of the reasons why they've got such a major emphasis on getting fringe lawyers. Like they want people who are going to be completely unfazed by the professional consequences of trying to push for blatantly illegal shit. Yeah.
I just want to say 2 things about this. The first of which is I do feel a little bit I'm feeling sorry for some pretty bad people.
Oh my God. I feel less sorry for them than I feel for JD Vance.
I feel a little bit sorry for the Project 2025 guys who honestly are just Trump's best supporters.
Yeah.
Like when I say best, I don't mean as human beings. I mean they are his most loyal supporters.
That is
who would
true.
Do anything to help him in any way, shape, or form.
Who picked up on this?
What's that?
You do know who picked up on this. Mike Cernovich.
Yeah, I've got right here.
Yeah,
I do.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll read some tweets from Mike Cernovich, which has got exactly this thought. Project 2025 people were around in 2016 and 2020, loyal to the end. In 2021, Chris LaCivita wanted Trump indicted for treason because of January 6th. That's why Chris is pushing out Project 2025 staffers. He's preparing a coup against Trump. That's a real Cernovich touch at the end there. And another one, Project 2025 was former Trump staffers who wanted to avoid the 2017 personnel problems. Trump's campaign is managed by a lifelong Bush loyalist who wanted Attorney General Paxton in prison and blamed Trump for January 6. Jobs are being promised to never-Trumpers. Had to push aside 2025. So he's got a bit of a conspiracy bent to it. But I'm interested in your views on what Cernovich has to say. If there's any potential
Interested in my views. What?
Well,
do I think LaCivita is planning a coup?
No, but is it a problem that one side of Trump's world thinks that his campaign manager is playing a coup? Is that a problem for his campaign?
Oh, look, I think that this is actually fairly typical of how Trump world works. That the most precious resource in it is Trump's attention.
Yeah.
Right. And there's always a lot of competition over that. There's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of resentment. Given the kind of paranoia that Trump openly promotes publicly, of course they're going to be having paranoid fantasies about internal coups and shit like that. I suspect that this stuff is actually very normal in Trump world, and we're just getting a little taste of it now. I don't think it's I don't think it's a problem.
Okay. Well, just to finish off my thought though.
Yes.
That these people, they are his most loyal supporters, and he has absolutely treated them like shit.
He has.
Just constantly. and they keep coming back for more.
This is why I think they're so obsessed with retribution and the idea that when Trump comes to power, he will humiliate their enemies. You know why? It's because being an ally of Trump is a constantly humiliating experience. He is constantly humiliating you. He's constantly bullying you. He's having whatever fun he can have at your expense. He's throwing you under the bus whenever it is politically expedient. And the only way that you can respond to this is by saying, yeah, Mr. Trump's right. You know, this is the JD Vance experience at the moment. Of course you're going to fantasize about, okay, that the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is that Trump is going to finally start treating our enemies the same way that he treats his friends. He's going to finally start bullying them rather than just bullying us.
That's the pot of gold.
That's the pot of gold
That's
at the
the
end of
rich
the rainbow.
reward.
Like that's why all of these fantasies about retribution, that's what they're praying for. And that's why it's a very high stakes election for these people. Like, if Trump doesn't win, what have they got to show for this 4 years?
That's why it's high stakes.
4 years of going through all this bullshit on a daily basis, of being, you know, Trump's most loyal allies and being the first ones under the bus. And then Trump standing in front of the bus and saying, no, go back. Go back over them.
Yeah.
I can still see someone moving over there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's time for
Stats Nugget. I've never heard this music before. Now I can see.
How good's that music?
Yes. Look, I think we've established that this thing doesn't even work, right?
I got no idea.
Yeah, okay. So
You're
sorry.
If anyone needs it, you're the one who needs it.
Sorry
not
for
me.
the visual distraction. That's going. Anyway, yes.
For those who aren't watching, we got a new button on this machine, little mixer that Richie Mother Hen Cook gave us, which allows us we can put 4 stings that we actually play during the podcast, so
Yes.
Dave can hear them.
This is amazing. This must be what it's like for people. You know those videos that you always see online of someone who's deaf and like hears for the first time.
Yes.
Due to a
The bionic ear, yeah.
implant. That's what this is like. By the way, the crackling that was coming through my microphone last week,
Yeah.
Richie identified the problem. It was actually a crackling intercom.
He's so good.
He's so good.
Why is he a writer for? He should just be a techie. Like, he's so good. Anyway, my point is we've got 4 stings here, right?
Yeah.
And you know 3 of them, which means I've got a spare one, which means if you have any ideas of a sting you want, Sting King Dan, may put them together. Just have a suggestion.
So have you got Michigan Corner there?
No, I don't.
Oh.
Well, we know when we're going to do Michigan Corner, so I'll load it up when we're going to do it. It's all right. It's okay.
I don't actually have one ready to go.
No, it's exactly. That's my point.
Okay.
But I've got policy time, and I've got Chaz Unleashed.
Okay.
But anyway, there's one missing. So if you guys have any ideas for a sting that Sting King Dan can whip up for us, I'm sure he'd be pleased to do so. Thank you very much, Dan. I really appreciate you, and I've given you a nickname, Sting King.
It's not a great nickname when you say it fast.
Yeah.
Stinking Dan.
Maybe I should call him the King of Sting. The King of Sting. The King of Sting. That's better. Okay. Anyway, it's a stats nugget. It's about immigration. During Biden's term in office, he will have expelled, detained, or deported how many illegal immigrants, do you think?
It's a fuckload. Because Politico actually had an article saying Trump wants to deport all the illegal immigrants. He'll have a hard time deporting any more than Biden has. I'm guessing it's more than Obama and way more than Trump.
Yeah.
I've got no idea.
No numbers? No numbers?
8 million.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good. 6.9 million.
Yeah.
Pretty good. That's 73% more than Trump did.
Yes.
So, given that there were about 11 million migrants showing up to the border, that's border crossers plus asylum seekers.
Yeah.
Around 7 million of them are expelled, leaving 4 million over. About 2 million illegal immigrants already in the country tend to return to their homes every year.
Mm-hmm.
So the net population growth about 2 million or so.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's 2 million over the term, not over the year. So we're talking about there's been about 2 million extra illegal immigrants during Biden's term, not 20 million like you hear Ted Cruz say sometimes. All right. CBO has found that the surge in migration since 2021, which I just described, will create a net savings of $970 billion for the federal government over the next 10 years. Savings.
Yes.
And the reason for that is because most immigrants pay more in taxes than they take out in government benefits.
Yes. Because they can't access government benefits in many cases, but they can certainly pay taxes.
And immigration also increases economic growth, which in turn increases tax revenue as well. So there we go. That was a little stats nugget. That was a little
stats nugget.
Yeah. You're going to regret that I have this power. You're going to regret it so quickly. What was the Mitch McConnell phrase? You'll regret it, and you'll regret it sooner than you think. Dave, got any Veepstakes thoughts? We got 3 left. We've got Waltz, we've got Shapiro, and we've got
Bashir.
And we've got Mark Kelly apparently.
So Bashir's out.
Well, he's not out, but the leaks are that they're the 3 left. I mean, like no one said Buttigieg is out.
Yeah,
but I mean, do you have any thoughts? I mean,
you're
thinking Bashir. Is that what you're thinking? Despite that?
Well, no, I just read somewhere that he was one of the contenders. I mean, but Bashir makes a certain amount of sense of if you decided the most important thing was to get independent white voters, which is certainly that would be a reasonable thing to think about. He's probably your perfectly calibrated pick for that. Josh Shapiro's electoral mathematics is very good because the polling seems to suggest Harris has got a good shot of winning Michigan and Wisconsin just as it is. Pennsylvania seems to be a harder nut to crack.
And he's a very popular man.
Very popular, and she is going to have to deal with a lot of fracking ads.
Yeah.
So the electoral mathematics there would be good. That wouldn't be the best one for internal party harmony, but then again, there's probably always going to be some kind of issue around that. So
just for the number, his favourability in Pennsylvania at the moment is 61%.
Yes, yeah.
So
yeah. Like he's getting 3 in 10 Trump supporters saying that they'd vote for him. So no other Democrat can do that. Yeah, because Shapiro versus Kelly is often something that gets talked about.
Yeah.
I would just, if it does come down to swing state maths like that, you just think Shapiro's more votes for your buck. Like Arizona, yeah, it's important, but it's 10. Pennsylvania is 19.
Yeah, and also Kelly's got the issue of replacing him in the Senate.
Yes, which is a difficult thing to.
And he has his own problems, you know.
Yeah.
Like people talk about the Israel thing with Shapiro. I mean, I've talked about the Israel thing with Shapiro. By the way, I should just be clear. While he is the most pro-Israel Democrat, he's still a Democrat.
Yeah.
Like he's no fan of Netanyahu. I'll tell you that.
No.
Like I think I got a quote here. I personally believe Benjamin Netanyahu is one of the worst leaders of all time. And he's still a 2-state solution guy, right?
Yes,
so
yeah.
he's still a Democrat, but just in particular, he was very critical of the campus protests.
Yes, he was.
In particular, and I think there will be. So maybe some young voters who won't have forgotten that, shall we say?
Yes.
But, he compared them to the KKK at one point in time.
That was pretty bad.
I'll go the quote here. We have to query whether or not we would tolerate this if these were people dressed up in KKK outfits or KKK regalia making comments about people who are African American in our communities. And yeah, I've made the same comparison. You know what? I'm not going to be vice president for the Democrats.
No. More's the pity.
Yeah,
so that's 3. So who are the others?
There's
Roy Cooper's ruled himself out.
Yeah, and by the way, can I just say why? I'm not sure. Did I tell you this? Why I thought Roy Cooper would be such a good pick? Because I didn't even mention this on the last PEP.
Yeah,
he was actually my pick, Roy Cooper.
Yeah,
not my pick, as in Kamala Harris will do this.
Yes,
but if I was Kamala Harris, I would pick Roy Cooper.
Yeah,
and the reason for that is not just because I think North Carolina is very much in play, possibly more in play than Michigan.
Yes,
and they might win both. But on top of that,
hang on, more in play than Michigan?
Possibly. You reckon? Well, I know right now Bloomberg says Kamala's ahead by 11 points in Michigan.
No.
But I think that when everything settles down, I think that once again, this is not based on, we have no evidence at the moment. We're just gathering it. My gut feeling is that Kamala Harris is going to end up somewhere between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama or Joe Biden or whatever, so that her weaknesses are going to be the same weaknesses that Hillary Clinton had, which is white working class. And her strengths are going to be Sunbelt strengths. They're going to be black voters, Hispanic voters, young voters, that kind of stuff. And I know Michigan has plenty of black voters as well, but the white working class, that's why Hillary lost Michigan. She lost the white working class.
Well, she also had nothing like the black support that Barack Obama had. She
didn't have as much as Barack Obama, but she had more than Kamala Harris has right now. So my logic is just that when everything settles down, I'm not saying she won't win Michigan. I'm just saying that I think that North Carolina is really in play.
Okay.
But anyway, but that's not my main reason.
Okay.
My main reason.
Yes.
And this is a kind of an evil kind of reason. But my main reason is I just know that Roy Cooper would have driven Trump crazy because he looks like a vice president.
Yes.
Trump's so obsessed with the looks of these people.
Yeah.
He looks like, if you were going to cast a Hollywood movie, like a B-grade movie, the kind of movie that Trump would watch, and cast a vice president, you cast Roy Cooper.
Yes.
He's going to be loyal. He's perfect for the white working class. He's going to do exactly all the things that Trump was sitting there stewing about J.D. Vance, going, I wish my VP was like that guy.
Yes.
And so I could see it really getting under his skin. I thought that'd be quite funny. And so that was what I loved about Roy Cooper more than anything. But anyway, he's not to be because he's running for the Senate in 2026, and North Carolina has a weird rule where if the governor leaves a state, the lieutenant governor can take over.
Yep.
The lieutenant governor is Mark Robinson, who is a nutbag, who is also running for governor, and Roy Cooper doesn't trust him. What would happen if he left the state and left Mark Robinson to do whatever he liked?
Yes.
So he's not there. So let's move on. What do you think? Okay, so we've talked about Shapiro. What about Waltz? What do you think about Waltz? He wasn't talked about much until he single-handedly launched a verbal virus into the campaign.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, he's a very good media performer.
Yeah.
And he might be another one who's pretty good with white independents. Minnesota, even though there was a lot of talk from me, among others, about Minnesota becoming very competitive, I don't think it is anymore. There's been one poll of Minnesota since Harris took over showing her up by 10. And I think that suggests, I mean, you know, it's just one poll, but my guess is places that people were beginning to look at as competitive, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, even in some cases, I think they've moved back out into the blue column as a result of having a normal candidate.
You're not picking him for his work on states.
No.
You're picking him. If you're picking him because to motivate the base.
Yes.
Because he's the Democrats love him. They love him.
Yes.
Like it's in Minnesota, like just they were the 1-seat majority, got universal free school meals, legal marijuana, zero emission electricity by 2040, tax rebates for those earning less than 150K, 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave, red flag laws for guns, universal background checks for guns, automatic voter registration, free public college for those under $80,000 income, $2.2 billion increase in school funding. That's all in one term. You want to talk about consequential?
Yes.
Yeah, like the Democrats love him, and he's very, very good at, like, he's not a lawyer, he's a teacher.
Yes.
And he's from a small town.
Yes.
He's really good at talking to those people that they want to talk to. But he's kind of left.
Yeah.
So he's like, the base would love him if he was a VP. But if you're Kamala Harris, and at the moment, there's a lot of love going around. If you want to roll the dice, that you don't want to get someone who the base love necessarily, someone who wins you votes maybe, then you wouldn't pick him. But if you think you need the love, then he might be a good pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about him?
No.
No. About Buttigieg. I mean, the Buttigieg is just so good on TV.
Yeah,
you know?
that's, I mean, and you know with Buttigieg, he's never going to faceplant into his own ass.
Yeah.
Which is something you wouldn't think is anatomically possible, but JD Vance keeps accomplishing it. You know exactly what you would be getting with Buttigieg. A lot, like if Josh Shapiro's got problems though with the progressive base, Buttigieg also has those problems.
Well, I didn't mention with Josh Shapiro as well, there's a sexual harassment element with him as well, which is not him, not Shapiro, but one of his staffers.
Yeah. There's also teacher unions don't like Shapiro.
Yeah, no, he's a voucher guy.
Yes.
Yeah, one of his staffers, Shapiro, was accused of sexually harassing one of his one of his aides, and they paid her off with a non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
And that not a lot of people are loving that.
No.
But yeah, I was gonna say the other thing about Buttigieg is that, I mean, if it's not obvious by now, Kamala Harris is running pretty hard away from most of the Biden administration at the moment.
Yes.
If you got the transportation secretary as your vice president, that's a very Biden-y ticket.
Yes.
So I don't know. I want to play one clip just about the Tim Walz and how good he is. He's a different kind of good on TV than Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is intelligent. And not like Tim Walz isn't intelligent, but he does the rah-rah stuff really well.
They scream socialism. We just build roads and we build schools and we build prosperity into this. Their whole plan is to go backwards, to give tax cuts to the wealthy. And look, so surprising. You know, these super successful Donald Trump, who inherited $400 million and then proceeded to fail at everything. Middle America, you earn it, but you know what? You're not on your own. Neighbors help neighbors. And I will, this one bothers me. I heard you talking about punching back at the bullies. They see people less fortunate as scapegoats and punchlines for their jokes. We see them as neighbors. And I said it with my mom. My dad dies when my little brother's young. We're teenagers. We get Social Security survivor benefits. I'm all for pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. We didn't have any boots. Social Security was the boots, and we pulled ourselves up, and we paid that back. And I think J.D. Vance gets none of that. It's the aw shucks, I'm from here or whatever. So my hillbilly cousins did not go to Yale, but I'll tell you what they did. They contributed to our community, and they're proud of it.
He's good.
That's why they like him.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I got no idea who she's going to pick, but everyone's got problems.
Yeah.
But everyone has opportunities as well.
That's right.
Guess we'll find out.
Okay, on that note, see you later, Peppers.
See you guys after the white flash for the rest of... Thank you, the king of stings, Dan. See you guys after white flash. Until next week, Dave, stay peppy. Hello and welcome to Chaz Unleashed. By my count, we've got 17 minutes, so I'm going to get cracking straight away. Biden old correspondence. I was saying how a great piece of evidence that Biden was incredibly old was that when his policy was when he's announcing a policy to cap rent at 5.5% per year, or 5% per year, he said it was $55 per year, which made no sense and wasn't his policy. Ross says, I feel like $55 is Biden coming undone by a typo on the auto cue. 5% on a standard QWERTY keyboard can easily become 55. That's a great call, Ross. But even having said that, it's a one-line policy. It was his policy. The whole press conference was to announce his one-line policy. If he can't remember 5% and he's saying $55 because that's what it says on the auto cue, to me, that's showing a great amount of decline anyway. It's just one line. It's not hard to remember. Gwen, but it is a good point, nevertheless. Gwen said, commenting on Dr. Dave's assertion that Biden wasn't being honest with himself about his Alzheimer's, his mental decline. My sad experience with my mother who had Alzheimer's is that you don't know you have it. The cognitive decline affects your ability to self-analyze. Perhaps one of the first things to go. Just saying. It's a good call. DEI correspondence. I argued Republicans were stupid to call Kamala Harris a DEI candidate, but they weren't completely wrong because Biden did say that he was going to pick a female person of color. That's why I said I've been corrected by Dodge, Sturgis, and Elise, who point out that when Biden said he was looking to fill his VP spot, he said he'd pick a woman. He never specified he'd pick a black woman, and that's absolutely true. I got confused. I looked back. You're right. He said he'd pick a woman, so I was at least half wrong. At one point, he was looking at Klobuchar as an option, who was a white woman. Then at another point in time, they said he had 10 women he was picking from. Now, look, there are articles about him being pressured to pick a black woman. The Washington Post said Joe Biden pressed again to name a black woman as his running mate. NPR said pressure grows on Joe Biden to pick a black woman. So obviously race was in his mind there, but he never explicitly said that he was only looking at black women. And that's a good point to make. So I'm glad you made it. Amir said, at the end there, you almost got to a point of realizing that Harris is DEI in the literal sense of the term, but you cut yourself off and got a bit sidetracked saying that it's bad politics for Republicans to point it out. So regardless of the politics, do you not think it's true that Harris was picked as VP by Biden in large part due to her gender and ethnicity? I'd call that DEI, but maybe I'm misunderstanding. Look, I'm not sure I made the point clearly enough, so let me make it now. I think Kamala Harris was chosen with her race and her gender firmly in mind. I think there's no point denying it. She was not the most impressive candidate during that primary season. She showed a lot to be desired. Does that make her technically a DEI pick? Maybe yes. But my main point is that race and gender are not the only identities that can inform a VP choice. We constantly talk about the identity of someone being from a certain state. Being from Ohio is just as much an identity as being black or being a woman. It's not about your achievements. It's not about what you bring to the table other than who you are. Also, white man is an identity, isn't it? Just like black woman. And that's what we're seeing right now. Right now, the VP is supposed to be a white man. White working class is an identity. That's J.D. Vance. He was picked to help white working class men, to help attract white working class male votes because he's a white working class man. That's his identity. VP picks are often identity based. They've been identity based for decades. So I think the technical description may fit as a DI candidate, but I think the insult associated with that description is unfair. She's just like any other VP selection, in my view. It could be worse, though. Lance Wallnau, a prophet in the New Apostolic Reformation, said that Harris represents the spirit of Jezebel, and in a way that will be even much more ominous than Hillary, because she'll bring a racial component and she's younger. So be thankful for small mercies. You can be more awful than using the term DEI pick. What the FAQ correspondence. TW says, my 11-year-old daughter desperately wants to know what the FAQ is coming back. I'm sorry, TW. The ABC says it didn't rate well enough. I thought it did rate well enough, but I'm not the person with the money. And I've been lobbying them for a long time, and it's not working. It's not coming back, I don't think. But thank your daughter for watching. I had a lot of fun making it. And I was really enthusiastic about the future. I thought it was going to go well. And I'm really sad, to be honest, that it hasn't been renewed. But it is what it is. Them's the breaks when you make TV. Raising stakes of inconsequential views correspondence. Time Out for Fun says, I spotted a beautiful example of raising the stakes on inconsequential views this week. Australian Senator Ralph Babbitt quoted in the ABC, I call on the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to join me in denouncing Tenacious D, Jack Black, and band member Kyle Gass. And I call on the Immigration Minister Andrew Giles to revoke their visas and deport them immediately. Wow. That is indeed raising the stakes of inconsequential views or inconsequential jokes. Kyle Gass made a very minor joke on stage that his birthday wish was someone who could shoot straight. This is just after the assassination attempt. And they're talking about deporting him and revoking his visa. That is the textbook example of raising the stakes in inconsequential views. And it gets worse, actually. There's been a real disturbing turn on this kind of stuff recently. A woman wrote a joke on Facebook. Too bad they weren't a better shooter. And she was semi-doxed for that. Someone found out where she worked. Turned out she was a checkout chick at Home Depot. And this dickhead went up to her. I don't even know what he was trying to achieve. I don't know what she possibly could have said to make him happy. But this is what he did.
Are you Darcy Waldron? Yeah?
I was Waldron, yeah.
Okay, from Cayuga. And you think that the shooter should have been a better shot? Is that what you posted on Facebook?
I am at work.
You think that the shooter should have been a shooter, huh?
I am at work.
Yeah, I think that's pretty messed up. Pretty anti-American, if you ask me. As a veteran, I'm disgusted. What have you provided to this country? Huh? I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. You are ridiculous. And I'm making you famous.
What does she provide for this country? Well, you got a window seat to it, buddy. She's provided work, labor. She's working in a dead-end job to feed herself and her family. And that's what you're meant to do in America. She's just minding her own business, trying to make a living, and you're stuffing it up. I can't believe that people are beating up on minimum wage workers now because they don't like jokes. I find it particularly insidious that this jerk said, I'm going to make you famous. It gives you a real insight into his motivations. This massive loser, and he clearly is a huge loser, thinks he can have a taste of power if he ruins this woman's life. That's his motivation, to feel powerful and consequential, like he's achieved something. What a pathetic way to feel important, by destroying someone else's life. And libs of TikTok, who should know better because she's supposed to be against cancel culture, theoretically. She messaged Home Depot with that video saying, hi, Home Depot, are you aware that you employ people who call for political violence and the assassination of presidents? Any comment? She didn't call for the assassination of presidents. She was making a joke. Oh my God. And then this woman got fired from Home Depot. This minimum wage worker got fired because of the actions of A, someone who's supposedly all about fighting cancel culture, and B, some dickhead who can't mind his own business because he got pissed off about a joke in the comments of Facebook. And by the way, Libs of TikTok isn't finished. She got Fire Chief fired as well. On Twitter, he wrote, "Too bad it didn't hit him square," about Trump and the assassination. She got him fired as well. And Riley Gaines, who's an ex-swimmer who fancies herself as a bit of a civil rights activist, said this wouldn't have happened without Elon Musk purchasing X and Libs of TikTok exposing it. Approvingly, I might add. I mean, I thought Elon Musk was Mr. Free Speech. Now, it just makes me very angry. Look, Libs of TikTok hasn't finished there. She's also tried to get a chef in Michigan fired, a program manager from Uber fired, all because of jokes they made about the assassination attempt on Facebook. One-line comments. That's all it took. Now, I get why an entertainer is punished for saying something awful. I don't agree with it, but I understand the theory. Their whole job is to be a public face. They're paid well to do it. So when they stuff up being a public face, people expect them to pay some kind of consequences. I understand that. I get why when you represent a company, why if you're a CEO or if you're a public face of a company, and you say something awful, they're going to sack you because you're representing that company. I get that. That actually makes sense to me. But when they're a minimum wage worker, why should they lose their job because they made a joke you don't like? How is this woman supposed to pay the bills now? Should she just die? Is that what we want? Could she work somewhere else? Is she allowed to work? Is that okay with you if she works and feeds her family? Should her family just die maybe because she made a one-line joke you didn't like on Facebook? Is that where we're at? It's like the thing that makes me the angriest about this is that when you look at the comments, there's all this stuff about making libs live by their own rules. Sorry, how do you know she's even a lib? She just made a joke. She could be conservative for all you know. You've got no idea about this woman or about what's going on with her. It's just collective. Let's just say she is a lib. It's still collective punishment. Like, it's not like this woman was going around persecuting people and trying to get them cancelled, or was she? If you've got proof, please show me. But as far as I know, this woman hasn't done anything to set rules that you're then holding her to. She's just a schlep, just trying to live her life. And if we're collectively punishing people now, where if one dickhead does something on the left that you don't like, then all people on the left need to be punished to make them live by their own rules. Well, there's always going to be some dickhead on the other side, and everyone's going to get punished for the actions of a few dickheads, and then that's just a recipe for permanent warfare. This is just terrible. This is why I hate raising the stakes of inconsequential views so much. In my view, it's what's most wrong with the world right now. I hate it so much. Just stop it, please. Psychosis correspondence from Leon. I said that RFK had a legion of psychotic supporters. Leon says, just so you know, misusing the word psychotic is very harmful to people who actually experience psychosis and furthers the idea that psychotic means evil or bad. RFK does not have a legion of psychotic supporters. He has a legion of misogynistic and vile supporters who may knowingly and eagerly harass this woman. Psychotic is not a synonym for awful people or misogynist harassers. The majority of people who experience psychosis struggle hugely with their condition and will never become violent or harm other people. Psychotic symptoms mean a person is experiencing a diagnosable disconnection from reality, which is very frightening and stigmatized, and misuse of the word often prevents people seeking support. I know you probably didn't mean to further the stigma, but accidental misuse can still be harmful. And then Leon went on. Leon, you're absolutely right. You read my mind. I did not mean any harm. I misused the word. You're absolutely right in every way. I thank you for that correction. I'm not going to pretend that I might not forget this and use the word again incorrectly, but please remind me, because I prefer not to. I could use 1,000 words there. I don't need to use the word psychotic to describe someone who's a bit unhinged. There's a lot of synonyms for that. So why make the world a little bit worse unnecessarily? There's plenty of other words. So thank you for that much, Leon. It actually reminds me of my mum. When I was like 7, one of my friends at school asked me whether I liked Madonna. And I asked my mum, do I like Madonna? Because I was 7. That's how I rolled when I was 7. And my mum said, you don't like Madonna. You don't know Madonna, but you like her music. And I thought, well, that's great. You can read my mind, Mum. That's exactly what I meant. Thank you for setting me straight. And that's what you did, Leon. You read my mind and you set me straight. So thank you. And then finally, a lot of people having a go at me for suggesting that Michael Steele is a lefty on MSNBC, even though he's a registered Republican. Daniel, Jay, sorry, guys. We're going to have to agree or disagree on this one. There's a term called a Fox News Democrat, which was back in the 90s and the noughts. Fox News used to get registered Democrats who are actually right-wingers to come on so they could kick around the Democratic Party together, like Pat Cadell and Doug Schoen, if you want to look back in history. Michael Steele is the modern equivalent. He's an MSNBC Republican. He might be registered as a Republican, but his views have been essentially Democratic for at least 10 years. He may still be registered a Republican, but let's just put it this way. When Kamala Harris won the leadership of the Democratic Party, well, theoretically, this was how Michael Steele reacted on Twitter. He put out fangirl art it was Kamala Harris photoshopped to be Captain America. And he put out in a tweet with, hey, Donald Trump, you ready for this? He was very enthusiastic for a Republican, I reckon. I reckon anyone who puts out fanfic and fan art about members of the Democratic Party, especially more left-wing members of the Democratic Party, probably are no longer Republicans, even in theory, even if they are registered to the Republican Party. But that is something we can agree to disagree on. We got to disagree sometimes. I'm way out of time, so I'll see you guys next week. Stay peppy.